Okay. Like I said, the stuff we're gonna be going over for the next few weeks, definitely be not as we were doing. But progress. You didn't know this is an EMS class? EMS stands for Emergency Medical Services. This class and specifically is a paramedic class. Paramedic. In Indiana, now this is kind of a little bit of a hiccup on registry's part, in my opinion, but it is what it is. Indiana, we have 4 levels of care when it comes to EMS. We have EMR, EMT, advanced EMT, and paramedic. Back in the day, we had 6 levels of care. We had EMR, EMT, basic EMT, or basic advanced EMT, excuse me. So those are 3. You had intermediate 85, intermediate 99, and paramedic. They've kind of got their crap together on that front, and in the last 6 to 7 years on one of them and about 10 years on the other, they got rid of the 85 and then they got rid of the 99, and they've kind of delved responsibilities and practices up and down the slide chart. Back in 2014, they changed from basic advanced to advanced, which was mind-boggling because prior to 2014, basic advanced could do monitors and do all that stuff. Couldn't interpret, couldn't do anything with it, but they could take monitor transfers, which was real convenient for services to say we don't have to take our paramedic out of county to do a monitor-only transport. However, the problem with this was that they gave them a monitor, but no medications to do anything with if something happened on that monitor. They didn't teach them what any rhythms were. They just said, this is your monitor. Good luck.
We could do our 6.
Huh?
We could do our 6.
You cannot transport them. That's the problem. You can obtain a 12 lead, you can transmit, but you cannot interpret and you cannot monitor. Here you can because we have a specific waiver, but as a general whole, cannot, right? So then they, back in 2014, National Registry in Indiana got together and were like, let's change some stuff. We're like, all right, cool. And that was the class that I decided back in 13, I think it was 13, I decided to take an advanced class. And I was like, yeah, cool, I can do stuff now, right? So they got together and we're like, all right, in Indiana, advanced can have monitor. We're going to teach them 7 basic rhythms and give them a couple drugs. Halfway through my class, they said, no, we're not. Halfway through the last half, when they said, yes, we are. Right at the end of my class, they said, no, we're not. And after my class, they said, yes, we are. But the training institute is responsible for teaching the cardiology portion of it. So within 6 months, the state took what they did with the advanced program. National Registry didn't know what states were doing, so like, here's a test. And the initial National Registry test that they put out had a 42% pass rate. 42 on a National Registry exam. After 2 years of anywhere between 40 and 60% pass rates, they were like, we should probably look at this. And they did. And now they've got to the advanced level that is now National Registry based today. That does not include cardiac monitoring, but does have more things that they did back in 2010 with the basic advanced that could only do IVs, fluids, albuterol, D50, or let's just say dextrose in general. And I think that's it.
Glucagon.
Back in 2010, glucagon. That was like, they had like 5 drugs and 2 of them were fluids. Like that's how small the thing was, but they could do IV and monitor. Now you can do first round cardiac epi, but you have no monitor. So it's like a Mexican standoff with registry in the state of what they want to do and nothing can get done. But anyways, EMR is what you'll see on your fire department sometimes, specifically, typically, your volunteer fire departments, just because, it's for your volunteer fire departments, it doesn't make a lot of sense to spend $1,000 or $2,000, $1,000 to get your EMT up, or $2,000 to get your advanced EMT and up by the time you're compounding, or $10,000 to $20,000 to get your paramedic, when you can only operate at a maximum of an EMT level. That type of money doesn't make sense. The problem is, this is another one that the state adds and removes stuff. You can backboard, no you can't. You can C-collar, no you can't. Let's do blood sugar, let's not. It's a constant delve of changing of information, and no one knows where they're at. But that is the we'll say the lower level of care is the EMR. You have your EMT, which some of you aren't here and you know. In the last 10 years, the EMT level has grown in Indiana of what you can do. 10 years ago, you couldn't do a glucose check in Indiana as an EMT. 10 years ago, your medication administration was oral glucose and oxygen. I see in the next 5 to 10 years, there not being an advanced level or an EMT level, but like they are going to morph those two scopes. That's just my personal opinion. We'll have 3 levels. You'll have the EMR, you'll have what I'll call EMTB, and then you'll have paramedic. Just because that EMT level is growing so much, I see within the next 5 years them giving IVs and what we're doing to that EMT level and just getting rid of the advanced level one way or the other. Just my opinion, could be wrong. To me, that would make sense. You have your advanced, again, state by state. What can your advanced do in Kentucky? I know you guys are kind of different on those things. Do you guys know?
Yeah, depends on where you're at though.
Let's take provider specific stuff out. Like, what does your cabinet allow you to do?
A lot, some narcs.
Pretty similar to over
Yeah.
Metro Advanced can get like pain meds and all that.
Which in Indiana, you can't, as far as narcotics or controls go. Controls you can with special waivers or, non
Like our advanced.
peritoneal, what, huh?
Like the advanced of the one that's got ketamine.
And that's here. Here, my advanced have nebulized ketamine. We don't do IV. They have nebulized ketamine. They've got Ativan. They've got Valium, Toradol, Zofran, and all that kind of stuff. I know in Indiana, I know services are trying to do it. I don't know how they're getting away with it because very shortly after they get away with it, they get it yanked. But advanced in Indiana cannot give narcotics. It's not going to hold. It's a thing that the state will. It's not going to mesh well with them. And somehow some people get their waivers and then they'll be like, we messed up. We'll take that back. Did you guys ever get it there?
We had nothing for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then the state realized it? Yeah.
Did they hand you a Ziploc bag of drugs?
We had narcotics in the drugs. We would take turns checking it.
So then the top level of care is paramedics. The nice thing about Indiana, there is no ceiling for paramedics. If your medical director says, hey, here's a surgical kit, you can go do amputations in the field and you can do C-sections as well, guess what you can do? Amputations and C-sections. There is no ceiling in Indiana. That is the scary part. And that's why, don't record this part, we can get away with some pretty gray area stuff here because we have a very good medical director who's involved that says, hey, I'll go to him and say, this is what I want to do. And he'll go, why? With him, he's not a yes person. I better have a bunch of supporting documents to go with it. He'll take a couple weeks to a month to review it. He'll sit down, we'll have a conversation, and he'll either approve it or he won't. The one thing that's different about this paramedic than the other 3 levels, this is a license to practice. This is not a certification. This is not a appreciation award. This is a license to practice just like a physician. Every other level is a certification. This is a license. It goes to it is in conjunction with someone we don't deal with in the health board. With being a paramedic, you now have a license. I carry my own malpractice insurance since I have a license. Your services should carry those as well. But With it being a license, it's a lot more scrutinized than a certification.
Why did they change that?
I think part of it was an effort to get our pay where it should be. You know, when you're dealing with RNs and
I guess I
LPNs
don't
and all.
understand the difference in the certification.
Certification says, hey, you took a class, you got an A, here's your gold star, right?
Get more than your own.
Yes, top shelf, little white boxes, should be up there. Top shelf or second shelf?
Both my mainland and the spare yes.
That's $72.
Yeah.
I think part of it was to pay, and I think part of it was part of my personal feeling is we're going to see, and you already are seeing paramedics in hospitals. I think in the foreseeable future, you're going to have a lot of those, maybe not specifically U of L since they're a training hospital, but you're going to see paramedics running a lot of traumas and certain aspects of the ER to help alleviate the workload of doctors because A, we're cheaper, and B, we are more versed and exposed to it. I know that there's a couple hospitals that are already trialing it where their paramedics, granted they're under their doctor, but their doctor doesn't walk in the room unless the paramedic requests it. That they will run traumas, they will run trauma codes, they will run all of this stuff. Now they'll come in and check to see what they need, but it's not like the paramedic and the doctor are running the whole thing. The doctor's over there doing his thing, the paramedics in there saying this is what we do. I see that kind of, I mean, it's a money thing for the hospitals, but as far as the licensure, it's one way to get it to be more professional, and I think the part of it is trying to go to this nationally recognized model that they're trying to do. Right now, 37 states recognize it, the other 13 don't, which I think is stupid. Like if I tried to go back to Florida right now, I'd have to take their test all over again. It's dumb.
But probably not a problem.
I don't know, I'm not gonna do it. But, I mean, I think it's a dumb process. If I've spent, 6 to 16 months in a class, I went through and did all of these things and I've passed national registry. If I pass national registry, why do I need to pass your state? And that's why Indiana, because before EMT, I know when I took my EMT, it was a state exam. I think when you did as well. And then somewhere around that 13, 14, and they mandated it by 16, you had to do national registry because Indiana was becoming a national registry state. So now we can say, hey, just like in Kentucky, they can come over, file for reciprocity, and they're done. If I go to Kentucky, I file for reciprocity, pay their extortion fee, and I'm done, right? But if I go to Florida, I have to do the whole thing over again. Not the class, but the whole testing and all that, which I think is ignorant. So I think they're trying to get everybody across everywhere on board with that model. I think it's just going to take some time. And again, a lot of it comes down to the extortion fees that these states can pay. For me to go back to Florida to be a medic would cost me over $1,000 just to get my licensure down there. Like I was Kentucky and Ohio certified as well as Indiana, and Ohio was like $350 a year. I was like, nope, I'm never going to Ohio. So, bye.
In the state of EMS, they should be paying you to be certified.
I agree. Well, when you get your paramedic, you're going to be paying $150 every 2 years to renew your certification, just so you know. It costs me about $300 to $400 every 2 years to make sure my critical care and my paramedic. It is 72 degrees back here.
Indiana.
No, National Registry does. One left? Okay. Nope, because I just spent $10,000 on those videos. I'm just going to not order them.
Do we have to remain national registry? Because I'd let my national registry lapse on my advance, and I'm just an Indiana advance. So like with a paramedic,
It's the same thing with paramedic. To be initially certified, you have to have your national registry, but you don't have to maintain it. If you don't maintain it, you're an idiot.
I was an idiot. The national.
No, I'm just letting you know now. And probably 10 years ago, it didn't matter. Now it matters because you have 37 states that recognize this. So if you let it go and you want to go to one of those states, guess what you have to do? Take registry over again. Yeah.
Says the guy that's second medic class.
So,
Yeah.
and I will tell you, again, registry is an extortion fee. You pay to play. Money, here's my renewal. Thank you. Have a good day. So, modern paramedicine encompasses disciplines of healthcare, public health, and public safety. Our roles and responsibilities are changing. Here's a good example. We now have a community paramedic that goes around and just, typically in our line of field, we're being reactive. We get toned out to something that's already happened or is currently happening, right? Our roles and responsibility in the field are changing because that opportunity, we have to be proactive. We can say, stop doing this, don't do this, you should do this, so that we can help, maintain those people's levels of health. We obviously provide emergency care outside of the hospital. That's what it's called, pre-hospital. Biggest thing and this is where a lot of people hang up. Back in my medic class, I had someone that literally could read a page in the book and recite it word for word. Genius.
Parents.
He would read it, retain it, and could regurgitate it back to you. Could not get it here. This is a job, this is a license, this is a responsibility that you not only do you have to be a didactic learner, you have to be a tangible learner as well. Just because you know it but can't do it, that's that whole adage, those who can't teach. I like to think that I'm excluded from that, but you have to be able to make independent thought process. You have to have some deductive reasoning. You have to make some judgment calls, and you have to be able to do it. You can't, I can't just be, Casey and I are partners. I can't be like, Casey, go ahead and innovate that person. If I can't innovate, I can't do my job. I can't rely on her to carry out everything that I need done. So, and then have the appropriate licensing and credentialing. We are the overlap of all three. Let's see the Venn diagram popping up. We function under medical directors. Each service or each area has their own. Ours, we use a local doctor. Do you guys use Yazel or who down there? Knight,
McLean,
McLean, Seattle Clark.
yeah, and then we have Porter for the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are the ones that kind of set your threshold. They are the ones that say, yes, you can do this, and no, you can't. A lot of that is going to be based off how it is ran. We are a government entity here. Chapel's a private service. KDH is hospital-based. It all is going to depend on what type of service that you are and how integrated you are with those hospital systems in their area. Knowledge, skill, attitudes consistent with expectations of public and profession. That is one thing that is crushing our profession is people's attitudes in this field. I don't know why so many people join this field and are constantly bitching about a nuisance of seeing a patient. Like, that's literally what you signed up for. Mm-hmm. I thought called 911. You are 911, but you're bitching. Like, that needs to change, like, in a hurry. And I think those types of people or that thought process in this field is why we are not recognized like nursing, why we are not recognized like doctors, is because of two things: our professional appearance and our attitude. Until those are streamlined and brought back on board, you're not going to be taken seriously. We're not going to be viewed as a essential service. We're not going to be viewed as credible, because there is no consistency along the way. You see that from service to service, and that's not the people's fault. There's just so much difference between medical direction and the equipment that they have and all of that. Comparing us to Jackson County, even comparing us to Washington County, comparing Jackson County to Jennings County. There is no consistency across the way. You cross into a different county and shit's changed. Whether it's for good, bad, or different. We have to raise the bar on all of that across the way for us to probably get up into that $30, $40, $50 an hour price tag that RNs and stuff that you're seeing. And I think for us to be considered respectable, we all have to change our attitudes and our outlook and our appearance on how we approach things. This isn't turning into a TED talk, but I can tell you, I will get in your ass here, real deep in it. You won't need a proctologist for a hot minute if you get an attitude with my crew or my patients in this county. You are not going to be inconvenienced by doing a run. You can bitch on the way to the truck. I don't care. Feel free. But as soon as you get to that patient, you better be sunshines and rainbows with that patient. This is your job. This is what we're here to do. You don't get to pick, oh, I want all the traumas in the plane crash. Well, you can get me with a UTI too. That is your job. We are a link between health resources, whether it be from doctor's offices to hospital, hospital to hospital, or being their first point of contact to get them to a hospital. We should be advocates for the patient. I ran into an issue this weekend where I was awoken out of a dead sleep at roughly 4:30 in the morning because there was a difference of opinions on what one entity wanted to do with the patient, and they were trying to blockade what the patient needed done. You always advocate for your patient. You do what's best for them. Not what's best for you, not what's best for the patient's family, not what's more convenient. Advocate for your patient. Ensure the patient receives the best possible care without regard to ability of pay or insurance status. That's one thing that we are bound by. We don't get to show up and be like, insurance card, please. They don't have insurance. Do you have funeral arrangements? That's not a conversation we get to have. We treat everybody the same. These things we do really bad on. Public education. With the age of social media, it does make it somewhat easier. But again, we all know we shouldn't smoke, drink, vape, do dumb shit, but every day we smoke, drink, vape, and do dumb shit. So no matter how much public education there is out there, people are still going to do what they want to do. We can put a bunch of literature out and we can post pictures of car crashes and say, don't drink and drive. And guess what everybody's doing? Not everybody, but guess what people are doing every day? Drinking and driving. Smoke cancer kills, this many people a year. That sucks. I mean, it is what it is, right? Participation in injury and illness prevention. Unfortunately, we are the redheaded stepchild of public safety. We don't get to go out and shake babies and kiss hands like fire and EMS or fire and police do. Fire's got a lot of downtime and they do a lot of PR, but it is what it is. Very few people go, there's an ambulance, as a kid. They'll go, there's a fire truck, there's a cop car, and I go, there's a taxi. That's just, we have to change that perception. But again, we won't change that perception until our appearance and our attitude change. That's why I am how I am here. I will yank an employee off the truck and throw them in my chase vehicle. And it's happened before. I think you were there for one of them, as new as you are. I will remove you from a truck and I will take your patient from you if you will be a twat. I will also send you home when we're done. But that is not how we treat patients. And until we get respectable like that, we're still going to be considered a taxi service. Mobile integrated health, again, that's something that's new. No one really knows what to do with it yet. Like right now for MIH in Indiana, we're all kind of like, we don't know, we're still growing. We're kind of feeling it out. There is no, here you go. State sent out some guidelines that were like 6 paragraphs long. Like, here you go. And we're all like, okay, what do you want us to do with it? Yep. Oh, okay. So, MIH. So our main goal, why don't you speak on that? I will say our main goal is, to me, I will tell you I have very little to do with MIH here. I pay it, I fund it, I make sure they got what they need. I don't make sure the schedule's full. I don't know how many people they see a day. I don't know any of that. I kind of let a couple of other people take that brainchild. It's more of just community advocacy though. And I mean, some of these are just people that need someone to talk to for 10 or 15 minutes a day regularly. But I know they help with their medications, make sure that they're organized. We do vital checks on all of them. What else?
Like house safety checks if they're concerned about like tripping hazards, if they need like a rub move or something like that, make sure that all their like safety equipments like walkers and wheelchairs and stuff like that are up to standards. If they're concerned about something, helping them contact their physicians or getting them resources that they may need. We found classes for people for like balance health. We organize and set up their medications and educate them on their medications. We help provide them with medication lists that tells them when to take it, what it's for, and their dosage if they need it. We also help them create those lists and find their DNRs and put on their fridge just in case we have to make runs on them. And because they know that they're at high risk and they have a lot of medication issues, we let them know that because we're seeing them so frequently, we have a trend of their vitals. We also have every single medication they take and all their medical history. So if we pick them up, it's already in our system. So it makes it super, super fast. Plus you get to know them and it's really nice.
And I will say, as far as that trend go, last week we had a thing where we've been seeing this patient since last November. A lot more consistently since January. We went there and their heart rate was about double what it was. Their blood pressure was about double what it was with narrowing pulse pressures. And before we even put them on the monitor, the community paramedic that went out was like, hey, we need an ambulance out here. Turned out that they found that this patient was having a STEMI before it actually turned into they were having a heart attack before it turned into a STEMI, just off their vital trends. So that's the first time that I've seen it go, oh damn, that's a huge difference. Not that visiting and making sure that they're fine and all that isn't a difference, because to those people it means the world. Like I said, I think a lot of it, I think about 75% of it is just bullshitting with the patients and just giving them something to do and feel important for a little bit. But that was one day that it turned into like, this person, if we wouldn't have been there and known these trends, because the patient's like, I feel a little different, but I feel fine. Like I'm gonna go to the JC store. They're not. You're gonna go to cath lab. Like, that was neat to see from that perspective.
Do they pick up their medicines and stuff?
So we work with another company that has a health worker that if we don't do it, but we can call them. We have the ability. They come out every Tuesday from that company. That they work with the other part of it. They're the healthcare coordinator side that says, all right, Gage needs prescriptions and they can pick it up if they need that. Or, hey, your diet's not great. We'll get you, they have a nutritionist that they'll send out there and do the nutritionist side of things. And, we're only one piece of the pie in this that, they get to work with the other group. When they came out, they're like, this is far exceeding whatever we thought it would be. And it helps them too, because, they get all that information and they can kind of see those trends and they'll reach out and say, hey, can you get to the pharmacy to pick up your prescriptions? Would it be better if we did a mail order so it came to you? They kind of organize that whole thing.
Call, say they had a respiratory infection, coughing up crap. Can she call the hospital and be like, hey, can this patient get a prescription for azithromycin?
So we all as paramedics here, well, not all, most of us paramedics here that were here when this started 2 years ago have DEA numbers where we can write our own prescriptions that are non-narcotic. However, the grant that we're funded by will not allow that to happen. Now, next year, when we're off this grant and if the county funds it, then we can do telemedicine and say, hey, it sounds like you've got an upper respiratory infection, here's a Z-Pack.
That's me.
And we carry this stuff in our bags. If we know we're calling an ambulance for somebody, we carry some equipment. But most would be the less equipment.
Do y'all see a trend of it cutting down on a lot of the code one?
Flyers.
Like I'm just sick. I just need, a check.
Really noticed a trend. I mean, we see a lot of people frequently, but we also with our CP, we go to code ones and we be like, hey, I know you call a lot. Here you go. We can see you instead. I think that's worked for 2 or 3 patients.
Yeah, that's how we've got some of the patients is so now they're almost full. Like we started doing this 1 day a week, then we went to 2 days a week. Now we're at 3 days a week and we're about to go to 4. What we do is in their Wednesdays or Thursdays they see 12 patients, 11 patients in a day, and you think you're with them for a half hour each time. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's slammed. But when we had a little bit looser schedule, if they seen somebody at 9:30, they don't see their next patient till 11. code 1 run comes out at 10, an ambulance goes and CP goes. And if the ambulance gets there and goes, listen, there's nothing wrong, this is you, they would stay there, educate the patient, do all that kind of stuff, and get them on the schedule if they wanted it. That's how we've acquired, I would say 30% of our patient list is going on those code 1s that turned into be like, why are we tying up an ambulance? And that's how we got, you know, like I said, a third or so of those patients that we do have. It's just, and again, everybody does something different.
Do y'all do that for your like epileptic patients that call a lot?
No, because
You know
that,
exactly what I'm talking about.
you know, if we do send it out on some of those habitual things, and typically that has to do with non-compliance.
Well.
And that's where they come in and do their education side of things. But if it's a true, hey, they're being compliant and they're still having this issue, then no, that's not a big problem.
We see some patients on like a different schedule. Some people are once a week, twice a week, or this person like 2 times a week, or sorry, 2 times a month, or stuff like that. You know, people.
Yeah, they see anywhere from 8 to 14 patients a day.
So where does the money come from?
Right now, underneath. And that's the problem, is we cannot bill for this in Indiana. Well, let me take that back. We can bill, but it's 100% going to be on the responsibility of the patient. And no one is going to, no one's going to utilize that service if they have to pay $100 a pop. Like that takes away from it. And it's behind on times as Medicare and Medicaid are. It's not happening anytime soon. Colorado's been dealing with this MIH for 5 or 6 years now. Like they're way ahead of the game, and they still don't have funding. Yeah. So, you know, and you'd think being Medicare and Medicaid, you'd be like, let's fund the fuck up, because this is going to be significantly cheaper than a hospital discharge. So let's go ahead and pay the $100 service fee instead of the $3,000 ER bill. But they're not. So anything right now, it would have to go straight to the patient, and that defeats the purpose. What I'm trying to do here is just get the county to eat the cost of it. You know, I feel like $100,000 contribution to the county to my service, since I don't get tax money for their constituents, is a good thing. I mean, you guys being fire-based, you'd be able to eat that up, and I mean, that would be probably, running it 5 days a week would be a, you know, for one crew would be a $200,000 a year expense, and that's nothing on your $17 million. Like that's something you could fund. You know, $200,000 is about 8% of my budget here. $200,000 to you is about 8% of your budget. You know what I mean? And that's the difference, is the funding aspect of things.
I was just curious because I think they're getting, I don't know if Roll's getting ready with, or has taken medicine test, but
ISBC.
I think they've done savings to get that certification.
And then you can dual roll that, but then like being the community paramedic side of things, it's not a quick process. It's not a, hey, you all right? All right, have a good day. Like you're tied up with that patient for a solid 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah, I think they're realizing that is, yeah.
Because so then you'll be sitting there dealing with MEMA and something else come out, and you're like, now you as the community paramedic are no longer interested in this patient. You're like, 3 people just got shot. Okay, what else can I do for y'all? I see you. And leave. That takes away from it.
That's what I was.
In my opinion, you need to have a dedicated people to say, do this. That's just my opinion. Some characteristics, if you don't have these, you're going to need to work on. Learning to be flexible, learning to be confident, even though you may not know what's going on. That's one thing that I will harp on, especially when we get into scenarios. If you don't know, hit it with confidence, even if you're wrong. I will correct you if you're wrong, but I will tell you, we see people on the worst days of their lives, and the last thing they want is someone going, so, and they're gonna be like, fuck this, let me die. So, again, Derek, he can attest to this. I drilled in his head because he'd be like, I think I want, you think? And with confidence. And then there was some stuff that like, I'd hit him with a Denison. What? He said it confidently, 100% wrong. But if you didn't know what was going on, you'd have believed him. You'd be like, that's what you need. So be confident. Good good judgment. You're not going to always get this right. You know, that's the thing is we're expected to do what an ER does with a fraction of the space, a fraction of the equipment, and a significant fraction of the personnel. And that's what pisses me off about the relationship between ERs and pre-hospital is the ER is like, well, why didn't you get this shit done? There is 9 of you. One of me. And I did all of this shit.
Plus respiratory.
Yeah, and specialty. It's like, well, they had a brain bleed. Well, my eyes can't see it, motherfucker. You got this $2 million piece of equipment that you found out 18 minutes later. Like, so, and here's the thing. You're going to know going through this paramedic class, you have to spend time in the ER, the OR, the ICU, PEDS, underwater basket weaving, all of these other specialties, right? You know how much ride time nurses have to do on ambulances? Fucking 0. And that's why they're all hoity-toity. Yeah, your job's real cute when there's 9 of you and you have this room this big to fucking deal with your patient and that's not moving.
I know.
Try starting this IV in a closet while there's an earthquake. Now you know what it's like for us.
I know IU Columbus, they are mandating all their nurses to do 48 hours on the ambulance.
And that's specific to that.
Yeah.
As far as getting their certification.
Yeah, they don't need it.
Yeah, no. And it's like,
We had a couple Ivy Tech students that would like voluntarily.
oh, I mean, we've had that for years since we were here. That they'd be over there in the ER like, this is boring. Can we go with you? Fuck yeah. Please do. And then they'd go on a run and they'd be like, they'd go in the house and be like, nope. Like, come on, help lift. Lift with your back in the sharp twisting motion. Let's go. And I mean, it's a different world. And I think until there is some of this crossover, people aren't going to know. I mean, every tell us how to do our job, but is not willing to do our job. And it is your job to politely educate them when they want to tell you how to do your job. Prioritize decisions. That is one thing that people struggle with the most, is being able to prioritize what needs to be done, especially when there's multiple patients. You know, there's going to be times that you're the only truck that is on scene. You may have other ones coming, or you may have no other trucks that you're going to have to say, this person is going to die regardless of whether I deal with them or not. This person has a chance. You're going to have to make that decision and be like, be right back. Damn well knowing you're not coming back. That is one of the hardest decisions you'll ever have to make in this field. But prioritizing what you need to do for that patient, what patients are the most critical or most important, what needs to be done, what is a necessity and what is a luxury. Develop a rapport with a wide variety of patients. Some of you have awful attitudes towards certain people. Some of you have awful attitudes during, those repetitive patients. We have a repetitive patient here that calls about 3 to 4 times a week. And I visit her once a week and I kill with kindness. I kick in the door and she goes, Daddy! Well, Daddy's home. 100%. That is the conversation that we have. And I go up there to say, stop calling so much. And then the next week she'll call twice. And the next week she'll call twice. And the week after she'll call 3 times. And the week after she'll call 3 times. And the week after she'll call 4 times. And on the 4th time, I will show back up and then we'll restart the cycle. That's just the rapport that I have with this patient. I've been dealing with her since 2012. But again, being shitty towards patients is not advantageous to you or the patient. Now, I'm not saying there's not a time that you need to stay in your grant. Because a gift that I have is I can passively berate you. And you kind of feel it, but you don't know it. Should be in the maintenance closet. I can passively berate you and you're like, was that backhanded or not? It probably was. But going up and be like, what the fuck do you want? That's not a way to talk to patients. Now, I'm not saying that I haven't. I'm not saying that there's not a time that you won't. But every patient that you call because or it's a psych or it's an evaluation, get over it. Because we had an issue with that here, and she can attest to this. I came up with the idea of I will only pay you when you're on runs. That changes your attitude real fucking quick. Because most of the time you're sitting here getting paid for doing nothing. So when you are doing something, you can be supportive about it. And if you're not, that's fine. I will pay you when you're on runs and you can act how you want. And when you're not on runs, you're sitting here in free labor. That changed a lot of people's perspective. Huh?
Would love to be paid not to do anything. You're saying.
Don't change your attitude. But do it. Function independently. Again, we don't have, well, most services don't have the luxury of going, I need room 8 to get some Zofran, right? We make those decisions for ourselves and for our patients. And how many times have you shown up on a scene, there's been multiple people, and you and your partner can't go hand in hand and go, how are you doing today? You have to go, you go there, I'm going here. You go, what do you need? I don't know. And it's just, you're by yourself. You corral in police officers, fire department, first responders, whoever you can to help you, right? But you might have to function alone. That's a shitty ass feeling. I remember we had a nasty wreck on the interstate probably back in 17 or 18, somewhere around that time frame. We landed 4 helicopters on the interstate. We had 7 patients. I took 3 of the 4 helicopters. And other people were trying to fly their patients, and I kept prioritizing mine over them. And I was hating for a minute because they all had to go back around. But again,
Where do you find 4 helicopters?
we have, this was before we had Stat 2, Indiana 7, or Kentucky 7, Kentucky 11, and then we got Lifeline out of Columbus. Well, this is a saturated market. We have 7 helicopters within a 25-minute flight time.
We don't have that.
We have 8.
Don't we?
We have 8 or 9 within a 30-minute flight time. Because you've got Jackson County with Stat 2, PHI, Indiana 7, which is Madison. You've got Kentucky 11, which is Bedford. You've got Kentucky 7, which is Corton. You've got Lifeline, which is IU out of Columbus. Then you've got Elizabethtown, which is Kentucky 6, which is a 25-minute flight time. You've got Scare Evac over in Paoli, which on a T2 or something would be a 20-minute flight time. With what they've got, it's about 25 to 30. Then you've got, was it Richmond, which is another one, and then you've got Glasgow, which is a 32-minute flight time.
You've also got Scary back in Lebanon, Kentucky.
Yep.
Right there in the hospital.
This is a saturated market. It's fucking cutthroat here.
And if it's a peds run, you can get there, children's.
Very rarely will they do scene flight stuff. Typically, Air Methods will pick them up because children's air helicopters funded by Air Methods. Very rarely will they do a scene flight because they have to be activated and get their people together and do their hair and all that stuff. Very rarely are they going to do a scene flight though. Continuing education is big for paramedics. Huh?
Oh, we don't have any, right? We
Would
have
you-
2.
We call for Madison when we're in like Obisco, and then if we're Floyd County is obviously gonna call.
Yeah, because when I was on Greenville Fire, we had like 2 options and they would never fly.
Well, they want to fly now because it's saturated and like you've got bases closing. Like since 2019, I've been recruited from a bunch of places to try to go fly, and that's one of the reasons I won't because I don't want to go fly and then my base gets shut down. Like you're going to Glasgow. I'm not driving that far. Right now, I drive 1.7 miles to work, and that's long. Like I ain't driving 2 miles to work, let alone 20, let alone 200. Not that. But stuff constantly changes in our field. Continuing education is huge. We have to do continuing ed to redo our certs every year. I think as an EMT right now, you need 36 hours of continuing ed, something like that. As a paramedic, depending on whether state or registry, you need up to 120 plus 16 to 32 hours of A&R. As a nurse, you need 0 hours of continuing education. But reviews and practical skills every year here, we make you do a skills checkoff through 3 skills stations. That's just something so I know that I can say, I know this person is competent in these skills. That's just a peace of mind thing for me. Some services don't do that, some of them do. We do ours, every summer. I think they're coming up. Do ours here. Peer evaluations. Most people don't take well to that, unless it's coming from, administrative side that they don't want another provider going, you should have done this differently. Well, I didn't. Like, it causes a conflict. I think peer evaluations are good on a logistical level, but not a clinical level, just because it usually doesn't get taken well. Have an active role in your community. That's hard for us to do. Again, we don't usually have the downtime. We're already short-staffed enough the way it is. When we do have downtime, the last thing we want to be out there is shaking babies and kissing hands. We want to sit in the recliner for a minute, right? And then there's just, again, there's not a whole lot of forum. Like, I can remember, my dad was a firefighter, paramedic, police officer. Like, they rotated every 4 months through the thing that they were in. And I remember it'd be like, the police days that had canines and, all that kind of stuff out there, and simulation for courses and pursuits and all of that stuff. And then firefighter, they'd have the whole battle of the water ball days. And it's like, EMS, it's like, what do you do with them? You don't want to start IVs on, like, look, you want a needle in your arm? Fucking don't. Like, we don't have a whole lot of ways to interact on if we do, it's from an education purpose, and no one wants to listen to anybody talk about education. Just don't. So it's very hard, in my opinion, for us to get involved in the communities. We can do CPR classes, we can do things like that, but again, most people don't think about it until they need it. Most people don't want to do that because they're like, I never need to know that. Probably wrong, and it costs money. Everything costs money in our field. We're not, a lot of the places aren't tax funded. There's very limited grants. Fire department's got AFG out there for a cap of $1 million a year. And we were lucky enough that this year we got a $60,000 grant for training. $1 million? And I'm pretty sure all of you know, anything that has to do with medical, from scissors to whatever, it's quadruple the price what it would be if it wasn't medical. A pair of Raptor shears now is what, $100? When's the last time you went to Walmart like, I need a $100 pair of kitchen shears?
TikTok shop, that's knockoffs for like $15.99.
Uh-huh. Knock off your thumb. The National Emergency Medical Service Education Standards is something that we deal with now. And they put out a minimum criteria that have to be done. They participate in research and they listen to all those things. Emergency patients are always the primary concern, obviously. That's something that is wrong with the nation as a whole. Nothing we've done to do it, but a lot of people use the ER as their primary care physician, and that taxes our service greatly. I've been guilty of it. Not that I call an ambulance, but I'm like, all of us are like, I'm not going to go to fucking hospital until it's too late. Usually too late. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning when a clinic or a place isn't open and you exceeded the tolerance of being able to deal with it. So we all go to the ER and get stuff done. But there's times that you might have to hold a run or divert from one run to another because of how it sounds. And that's another problem is we don't have direct contact with these people when they call. And I can call for Amanda and church it up. Like, she's having difficulty breathing. She's blah, blah, blah. We get there. She's sitting there how she is now. And we're going, what? If someone calls, it's like sick person. And you get there and you're like, hey, wake up. Like, oh, he's been like that for a little bit. And that's part of the problem.
Called it a fall 2 weeks ago in Washington County. They, PD tried to slow us en route. We got there and it was not just a fall. She fell because she's having a stroke.
Yeah, that's one thing. Respectfully, we don't listen to police officers here. Slow your run. I'm okay. Appreciate your advice, but no. Because, here, we've got to this point because of things that have happened. Unless it's obvious, and by obvious, I mean body's here, head is there. They're fucking planking permanently with rigor or something like that. PD cannot stop CPR, nor can they request a 1079. Because there's been a few times here that are like 1079, we get there and they're in VFib. And we're like, well, it's obvious. What the fuck about this is obvious? Well, they're not breathing. No shit! That's part of this. We can fix that, stupid.
Or they just look at a vehicle that's fucked and say, all right, call for 1079, they're both dead. And they were both not dead.
Yeah. Me and Steve Ty went to that run. Had a rollover that a truck got its top taken off. Like, went under assembled. little Danger Ranger. It's a fucking Ford Ranger. Went under a semi. And these people are in this vehicle, both leaned over on each other in that 1079. And Steve and I were like, I was like, you want me to slow down? He's like, no. I'm like, cool, I'm not. And we went there, and both these kids still had pulses. And we're like, great job, guys. So yeah, we don't listen to PD anymore. Cross training, you see that a lot, because a lot of this is fire-based, which I'll get on that soapbox here in a little bit. Firefighters and police officers, we see participate in rescue operations, directing traffic. If I'm on the scene, I'm not directing traffic unless it's for my crew. Like if it's because we got to get a stretcher, I'm not going to be able to do it. If I'm there, like I'm there for a reason, we shouldn't be doing those things. That's a police officer's job. You have to be good at it. You got vests and batons and all kinds of stuff that help with that. I will block a road or step out in the interstate to make sure my crew can get in and out of their vehicle, but I'm not going to be out there for hours directing traffic. But everyone should be responsible for everybody on scene. So we have different types. You have 911 response, which most people here works for. The criteria for 911 for some places is different than others, right? Critical care transport, air ambulance, and tactical EMS. And then you also have convalescent EMS as well, which just does strictly transfers from nursing homes to dialysis, closest to nursing homes and doctor's appointments, those things. You have MIH, again, which is new, industrial medicine, sports medicine, corrections, ERs, critical care transports. Those vehicles move patients between facilities, and they have a highly amount of specialized equipment on those vehicles. Not all of them are ground, as you can see. Some of them are ground, like your CTs and your baby buggies and all of those. Those are considered critical care transports. You have fixed wing aircraft, rotary aircraft, and then you have those large, again, heavy duty vehicles that are the semi front with 4 doors that have a box that's the size of an entire ambulance on the back that can have, CT machines or incubators or things like that in the back, depending on what they're trying to do. But they are specialized vehicles for specialized things. That right there is a perfect example. That would be a heavy duty. Air ambulance. So, and this part also baffles me. In Indiana, air ambulances can staff nurse, or nurse medic, but they cannot staff medic. But that's so good. Nurse, okay. Nurse medic, okay. Medic, not okay.
Or I do because they want to have a payment.
Did you get my online thing?
I'll have to do it. Nurses can't innovate on that, probably.
Yeah. So that is the thing. When you're dealing with air medical, there is no scope of practice difference. Nurses can do everything medics can do. Medics can do everything nurses can do. If they don't have a name tag, you don't know who's who. Typically, the way that they organize it is, if it's an interfacility run, the nurse takes priority. If it's a scene flight, medic takes priority as far as who's going to run the show. Now, that doesn't mean that the medic's opinion on the interfacility or the nurse's opinion on a scene flight are any different. They hold the same amount of weight. There is no, but that's what they're trained in. These nurses typically came from a very busy ER. They know all the pumps and the drips and everything to do, right? And as medics, we're out there in the field in the corner. I was just like, how do you help? Like, we're used to being out in the elements, right? That's just comfortability. But when it comes down to it, on a helicopter, a nurse can intubate. A medic can do anything that a nurse can do. It's just how it is. The nurses are typically the ones that carry the narcotics on the helicopter. That's just what they do. Don't know why. That's just one of those things. I know when I did my pre-flight exam, like and this is what baffles me. So when we're going through this medic class, we'll dabble in lab values, we'll dabble in this like very minimally, but our exposure to the ER side of things is very minimal. And then the exposure to nursing on the EMS side is, as we ascertained earlier, 0. But when I take a flight medic exam, most of my stuff is nursing based. And then when a flight nurse takes her exam, most of her stuff is medic based. Because they're cross compatible. They want to see where you're at. So if I do a pre-flight exam, I'm going to get balloon pumps. I'm going to get certain drip rates, lab values, and stuff that I may not be familiar with. And that's just because you have to cross-train in that. The other thing is there's a $10 an hour pay difference between a flight nurse and a flight medic. But that's okay. Yep,
Is that why a lot of people certified?
yep. Because they do the same thing and make $10 more an hour. So if I went to go fly today, I'm gonna stay there for a year and then I'm gonna go, I would like to take my nursing exam, and they pay for it. So not only do they pay me to get my RN certification, they also pay me $10 more an hour after that. To be a base lead now, it wasn't like this way when back in 20 or 21 when they were trying to get me to go open up, not open up, but help at PHI's base. Now, base leads for their company have to be dual certified. Before it wasn't like that. But now to be a base lead, you have to be an RN and a medic. Which I think is great. Because I'm under the philosophy that I shouldn't be over anybody that I can't do what they're doing here, right? If we win critical, which I do, but if we win critical care and I had three people that were critical care, I should have to get my critical care. I don't feel, and that's why I don't agree with certain places' command structure, is you've got EMTs over paramedics. You are not going to talk to me about anything clinical at all, ever, 0. I'd like to talk about your patient care. I'd like to talk about your Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. You got time for that too? Because this conversation is not happening. That's the helicopter. Tactical EMS, we usually see these with your SWAT medics and stuff. It's a very niche program. Very rarely is there anyone that is dedicated just as tactical EMS, like that's all they do. They would do less work in the fire departments if that was the case. I'm gonna be throwing shade at the fire all day. It's nothing specialized to you. And you guys, it is what it is. I'll get on my soapbox if we get there. Just let you know. Don't go back and tell me he's being mean in medic class.
They need it.
Who? Need what?
All the shade you
Oh,
got. Every bit of it.
get your lamp.
I'm not.
I got all my shit. I got my fucking boss. I got my 1. I got my 2. I got my hazmat. I got my tech. I got all that shit.
I'm tired.
Don't hit. Anyways, but typically these people are cross-platform trained. Usually they're police officers that just piggyback as a medic, or they're, in the case that we have in this county, there's a couple of us that are deputized for special events that you come to your medic and here's a gun. It's like, okay. That's what happens here. That they're just like, here's your vest, here's your bag, and here's a gun. Okay. That's why I've got vests and stuff in my vehicle. Anytime that they'll do a hard one here. It is what it is. So. MIH in close contact with medical direction, provide at scene without transport to the hospital. Again, we hit pretty highly on that earlier, so I'm not going to go on it. Industrial medicine, those will see your Amazons and your big factories where they've got EMS within that confines of the wall. Their ability is pretty limited. Like, they still call for an ambulance. They don't like treat and street them there. They just
Churches have that.
do what?
Like mega churches have.
Oh, yeah.
Like even with medical, like.
You get the spirit.
Church has their own medical director.
Yeah, that's crazy. Joel Osteen. But this is kind of like oh shit, like Band-Aid until EMS, like true EMS gets there. Now, I'm not saying there aren't some factories that function, because there are some like big conglomerates that have their own ambulances on their stuff, on their properties. And they'll be like, there's been an accident in warehouse 6, and across the property, and they'll transport. But like here in the Amazon warehouse in Jeff, they're just kind of in a safety vest with their little fanny pack. They're like, pressure, while they wait for EMS. But they help with safety inspections. They help do accident prevention. Some of them do medical screenings, vaccinations and immunizations they can do in-house. They're more of a insurance factor for the company is what it really comes down to. Now, you're very well paid for that scope. I know, like, Amazon pays $20-something an hour for an EMT. But again, that's on a 40-hour work week, so bring that back down, right? But, you know, you just go around and be like, you got paper cut from that box? Okay, got you. You know, but then when they're like, my hand got sheared off in that press over there, they're like, fuck, what do we do? So their exposure, again, it's very niche. Like that's not happening in most places. And you have to wear a hard hat. Sports medicine, athletic directors, all of those things, they're very special trained in the kinetics of a body and how stuff's supposed to move and should move, and if it doesn't move, what do we do? Dislocations, strains, all of those things. Are you the one that has some cool sports medicine? I mean, is there anything you can add to that?
Not really. I mean, if there's been a lot of talk about incorporating medics with athletic trainers for the IV specifics, because we can't do invasive procedures. So if we had a kid, you know, that was down and needed some, say, you know,
Great place for a gas cap to be on my truck on our way to Seymour.
That's cool.
that's 100% not bad. We got gas.
Safety's bad. Hey,
What?
that check engine light's gonna come on, and we're gonna have to go get that scanned, or it's gonna fucking throw it in a limp mode if it doesn't by the time we get back.
It hasn't been on continuously. It has not gone on.
So, but yeah, that's one thing about sports medicine. Usually they don't allow a whole lot of invasive procedures in it. It's more of a, let's set this shoulder, let's set this knee, or is this the proper motion for this appendage? For them to do anything invasive, usually they need to be coupled with some type of medic or doctor.
Yeah, we're also not really good with, like, core injury. So, like, you know, check to the gut, something going on with someone's like,
It doesn't move.
we can identify, oh, something's really wrong with this kid, but we can't do anything when it comes to like any gastrointestinal type injuries. This is not our niche.
Corrections medicine, they will pretty much get the prisoner to the ambulance. That's about all they do. Like, they don't provide a whole lot of care. They know your basic CPR and ABCs and stuff like that. But, you know, as a liability standpoint, most jails aren't going to be like, just treat them internally. And, you know, if someone's sick, they'll send them to the nurse or something. But if there's an issue, they're going to call ambulance anyway, and they're going to be transported. ER departments, roles vary state to state. Again, you know, Baptist Floyd is a local one that's hospital based. When their ambulance crews aren't doing runs, they're in the ER helping. That's how it was designed. I don't know if they do that now. No? They went away from that?
Well, we're just too busy.
Fair enough.
Stefano, what did I do for months?
I know, we're too busy.
Clark's got a bunch of several paramedics.
Huh?
Clark's got several.
Now, the freestanding actually includes that.
Good.
And basic.
Because we're cheaper and can do more. That's what it comes down to.
Pretty much.
I had a guy,
Yeah, they
and then
There's one guy at Floyd, does he still work there, that wears like that tactical vest and fucking high heels? Oh, he left?
I don't know where he went, but.
Look like I got a bulletproof vest with IVs in every orifice. Oh,
Yes. Derek. Is his name Derek? Derek. It's him.
you know, flush. Any questions about any of that? All right, let's take 5. You got this. Oh. You can take monitor trains to it, you cannot.
So,
Bullshit.
when there's an ALS transfer, it's just hard.
Yeah, it depends on what they're on the line.
It's like, you gotta have an REO.
They can't. No, because.
The last time I worked, we had 2 ALS transfers and it was just cardiac. I was like,
I wish I pulled out
yeah, as long
of
as they're
that.
kind of like, as long as they're fine.
You can't do it.
This is the
Sorry.
I got
Yeah, they posted a picture with the doctor's dog out in front of Floyd the other day. Yeah, I said, that's, there's the Saviors in New Albany.
You don't really need a camera. Kind of like diabetes.
Who's the advancement?
I can't remember last name. Renee, Ponce, John Ponce, Dana.
She's been
Yeah, Dana's out. A little bit. Oh, Danny Carlton.
all right. Who?
Danny Carlton?
He's a flight medic.
I thought you were talking about
Did
Danny.
you say Danny
He's like
Carlton?
out.
Yeah. He's still around?
He come back again.
All right. So obviously in the last 50 to 60 years, EMS has advanced greatly since the time that it advanced from the 1860s to 50 years ago. And we're continuing to see those advancements. You're seeing a lot of different things being done. That's one thing that I try to do here is try to always push to do something different. Not that I want the state's attention, but you know, if they're involved, probably means you're doing something right and wrong at the same time, or trying to do too much, and I think it's a good thing. But it's also bad because you, again, like I said earlier, I think we need, as a whole, EMS across the board. I don't think that from state to state, district to district, county to county, there needs to be such a great variance between, you know, all right, in this county, we can do this, and then you cross over to the next county, and it's like, oh, we can't do half of that. Like, that's the problem, and that's how, you know, how do you address the pay issue or the respect issue if you're not holding everyone to that same standard, right? You know, how can we say, hey, service A that has just state minimums only is going to make the same amount of money as service B, who can do mobile labs and all of this stuff in the field? Like, that responsibility is greater, that knowledge base is greater. How are we going to pay them the same? And I think as a whole, for us to be respected by ERs and doctors and other services, we all need to bring up our quality of care to some minimum standard that needs to be greater than what it is. You don't need to know all of these dates, but I will point out some that you probably do need to know. In the 1860s, the first civilian ambulance service began in Cincinnati and New York. Anybody know what they were? Yes. Either went to the hospital or the morgue. No patient care was done. You were just in it. Kind of, which one do we go to? He's dead. Take a left instead of a right. There we go. And that's how it stayed for a while. In the 1915, the first known air medical transport occurred by the Serbian army. In the 20s, you've seen your first volunteer rescue squads pop up. Those are on the East Coast. Here's a couple key ones for us. 1947, first defibrillator was created and saved with defibrillation. So look at this gap here. Here, right? Here. It's almost 100 years, and we're like, hey, maybe we should do something. Right? 1960, CPR was shown to be effective.
That's crazy. I would like to think about that. 1960s. when we're
Yeah,
like, hey,
CPR is 60 years old.
That's
That's why, if for some reason you ever watch commissioners meetings or you ever read the shade pieces that I throw out on Facebook, EMS is still in its infancy in the great scheme of things. If we, like, I look at this date as our infancy. Like, this is when we actually started doing hands-on care. Like, that's cool, Napoleon had a position that did shit back in fucking 1797. That's not relevant now or anything on what we're doing. This time here, this area time here is when we started to actually do it. So we're 60 years old in the grand scheme of things. 60. There's people on this earth that did not have EMS when they were born.
Like so wild, right?
Yeah. 1960, but look at that, right? 1960. Hey, let's like pump on this dude's chest, like do what their heart does for them. 5 years later, hey, let's do some shit with his heart in the field, and like do some like field caths and stuff. Wanna? So in 100 years, we went from, hey, let's put them in a hearse to like, let's push on their chest. And then in 5 years, we're like, hey, this cool shit we're doing with the chest, let's do it while driving. Yeah, we're not right on the timeline of things. 1966, that's going to be big. Those will be your white paper date. As well as when the EMS got encapsulated in the Department of Transportation. So thereafter, they gave us their own little logo. And then the next year, AT&T was like, hey, let's make this really easy number to call. So
What did you call it? Just like, that call,
yeah,
ambulance service?
you call the operator, they'd switchboard you like, can I have your fucking dispatch or your hospital, please? Please hold.
That is fine.
Yeah. And then then in 1970, extortion was started. And that same year, the Tackle Box and Payphone TV show came out. Emergency. Old Rampart. Who's never seen an episode of that? We had a couple of days. It is rough. So like half my staff is like, best show ever. You need to fucking branch out. Huh?
Johnny Gage.
Don't get me wrong. For the time, it was probably great.
You come back.
Huh?
Make a comeback with our show we have now.
Yeah. Now we fucking, yeah. It's actually, I will say, I will take this show right here over half the shit that's on TV now.
Come on, Chicago.
Chicago's, that's a Sicily, stupid. You do you. In 1972, the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare was like, hey, this TV show kind of made a point, like how this can be productive. Here's $16 million. Let's give it to our 5 most populous states and see what they can do with $16 million. Right? The federal government said, here's some money. Do what you can do with it. In 1975, a less extortionated department was created. That's where you get your PHTLS from now. So after we came up with the sticks and paddles in what? 70? Oh. 60, 50, 47, right? 1947, we had the first defibrillator that was in a hospital. 32 years later, they came out with ones that were automated for the field. '81 is when you've seen PHPLS and stuff developed, as well as this omnibus budget reconciliation that took in all of that information from that money that they gave out and brought it together to see how they were doing. But you see what else it did? Let's get rid of federal funding. This is now a local problem. Because they had a brisk, what was it, 9 years of information. So they said that this could be supported and they don't need our help anymore. 9 years. What else? Anything on here? You can see these are now in the 80s and the 90s that we're starting to get into pediatric specific stuff. They're like, hey, not everybody is 90. Right?
Still wasn't born
You can see in the 90s, Congress did not reauthorize funding for EMS. That was fun.
yet. Now, but
So after AT&T created it in, what was it, 58 or something like that, in the 1999 is when we passed that 911 was a national number. 1999.
so when I was 1 year old.
Bitch, I'm older than he is.
Easy. Whoa. I'm down.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm not taking my blood pressure. I need to keep this to a minimum. Yeah, easy. Look at this. 2003. HIPAA the HIPAA becomes the standardized practice in 2003.
Isn't that because it was basically internet? I mean, that's what it's
Yeah,
for.
it came down to where everything was going away from the paper records and all of that was becoming electronic. The internet was the thing. MySpace was firing up, things like that. Tom and MySpace were pretty big back then.
Use Matt, it's great.
My number one friend, Brandon.
My Facebook was better than Facebook.
100%.
Just like publicly ranked our friends.
Early development goes back to the 1700s with Napoleon. All the creations of potions that they tried to do with medicines, they still do that with holistic medications. Code of Hammurabi govern criminal and civil matters, regulation for medical fees and penalties. You need to know what that is. You didn't know what out-of-hospital care is? It's when we transport surgery. Dominique Jean Larry, Napoleon's chief surgeon, was the first person to come up with some type of triage mechanism during the war. He's the first person that was like, this dude ain't gonna live. Let's just leave him. That guy has a chance. Let's not leave him. That guy's got an arrow through his neck. Ambulances again started in the 19th century. Versus they've obviously grown and developed since then. First one was in 1816 in Cincinnati. 1869, Bellevue in Manhattan was the first hospital to begin operating an ambulance service. Theirs was a little bit different, and theirs was kind of designated to say, hey, go out and get these patients and bring them back here. You go get them, you bring them here. It's the gabagool. It's kind of a monopoly. You don't have a hospital of your choice. The hospital of your choice is Bellevue. It's kind of what they did. Apparently World War I and II were pretty high rate of mortality. You didn't know? Thanks, Hitler. Hospitals started experimenting, placing physician interns on ambulances. Did not last very long. I guess they got car sick or something. I don't know. I think it'd be really cool if that was a common practice, but it's not. It's kind of what we've morphed into now. Korean War is when you first started seeing helicopters being used as a means of transport. That's where you got your TV show MASH from. And this is where we started getting our trauma system and triage system, started getting some tread on triaging in the US. 1956, someone decided to blow into somebody else's mouth to see if it helped. 59, they deployed a portable defibrillator. Again, this was not an AED. This was 2 sticks with some metal pucks on it. They were like, hey, I'm gonna put this on them and just like press that button to see if any of this electricity helps. And then a year later, before they pumped on anybody's chest, we just shocked the shit out of them. Like, let's not do anything else. Let's just shock them. Dog collar the shit out of them. And they're like, hey, maybe after we get their heart unfucked, let's try to help move that blood. And they're like, it's not a bad idea. So a year later, they're like, let's do something in addition to this. There you go. Clear depiction of the Korean War. 1966, accidental death and disability. The white paper, you do need to know that date. Most, I will say half of you will see that on your registry list for some reason. Or I can make you do what my class had to do and read the thing. But they came out with development of the EMS system, outlined some training for pre-hospital medical providers, started putting out things that ambulances and equipment should have, things that can help, things that would be great, things that would be ungreat. Again, 1970s, extortion 1 started, NREMT. '72, you started getting people's attention of what EMS could or should be. And I will say, for the time, that TV show was hella advanced, and what they were doing was like new age shit. So there are 15 components to the EMS system. You need to know all of these. First one is manpower. That's obviously your staffing and your ability to provide providers for patient care. Training. That's something we do not do enough in our field, I feel like. Everybody thinks that they know how to do shit. Like, yeah, I've used a traction splint before. I had to do it past my thing. And then it comes time to use a traction splint in the field, and it looks like a monkey fucking a football bat. Like, what's a tooth strap for? It happened the other day here that I was on a run. It was like, I put a memorandum out of how we run codes here. And every time I tell them to train on it, get it on. Good. Till a code came out, and then, what do I do? Well, yeah, that's why we should train. Communications, transport, emergency facilities. Obviously, what one hospital does not mean that the other hospital has the same capabilities. If you ever tried to call a car wreck into Clark, what's the first thing they tell you?
No, you don't.
Yeah, exactly. This person was just a witness. Doesn't matter. They witnessed an MBA. You should take them to well. Stupid. Critical care units. Those are specialized, obviously, formed. Public safety agencies, consumer participation, access to care, which everyone has access to care. They can pay for the care, but they've got access to it. Patient transfer, either between pre-hospital and hospital or hospital to hospital. Record keeping, patient records we have to keep for 99 years. 99. Payroll, I have to keep for 10 years. Like there's record keeping for everything. Medication purchases, I have to keep for 3. 3 years past the expiration date of said medication. Even if I use it 2 years before it expires, that means I have to keep that medication for 5 years.
Don't we keep our records too, like going clash with the ones that we do?
7 years. Yep. Public information and education. System review and evaluation. That can be system as a whole. It can be you as a whole. It can be how you and your partner are. All of those things. Disaster management plans. We usually fall short in that. That's kind of an EMA issue, but usually EMA in a lot of places is not ready as well. Mutual aid abilities. So, obviously we should all know what that is. Uh, 1988 NHTSA came out with 10 system elements: regulation and policy, resource management, human resources, transportation. Facilitates. This in your book somewhere?
Yeah.
19.
Page 19. That way you don't have to write it on. Communications, trauma, public information education, medical direction, and evaluation. 1980. So, where are you at, Schneck? All right, hang out here unless the county starts to blow up. Just hang because it caused a clusterfuck last time, so just try and stay there. Let Dickin know that you're going to try and stay there unless the county starts getting stupid down here. All right. But. Uh, 1996, the NHTSA came out with the EMS agenda for the future of how they seen it going for the next several years.
Have the predictions been close? Thanks.
You have 14 core EMS attributes, integration of health services. You have EMS research, legislation and regulation, system finance, human resource, medical direction, education. Those bottom 4 are usually not, maybe not the last one, but those other bottom 3 out of the 4 are usually not on the providers, like scope of giving 2 shits about. It's usually the administrative side of things that, you guys as providers give 2 shits about what finances are, as long as you get paid, you don't care what you use. I used to be that same way. We have a rule here that's like 3 IV attempts before an IO. No, IO's easier. IOs are $100. IVs are 5. Shit adds up. Public education, prevention, public access, communication, clinical care, information, evaluation. As a result of September 11th, Department of Homeland Security started coordinating with agencies responsible for protecting the country, and that's when that whole NIMS thing came out. That's after 2011, or excuse me, September 11, 2001. NIMS and them got together and were like, hey, stop using 10 codes. Because you had multi-jurisdictional agencies from different states that they all mean different. Like when I was a police officer in Florida, if I was on a 1050, I was on a traffic stop. 1050, wherever. Here, 1050 means what? Car wreck, right? So, Florida, I'm pulling someone over and running a tag. Here, I've got motor vehicle crash. So that was kind of their thing, was either uniform it across the board or get rid of it. Use plain English. They went with the plain English side of things. Problem with doing plain English is you've got some people that get on the radio and give a fucking dictation thesis over the radio, and you're like, I just would like to go transporting it, that's all you do, shut the fuck up for 5 seconds. And that's the one downfall to plain English. That's why all of our radios here now, 15-second timer on them before the time. 15 seconds talk before the radio shuts down. Keep back up. Yep.
It's good, I guess, if you know how to use that feature.
Yeah, you'll be talking and then just go. I'll let you talk. No, that's on 800. You can talk for days on iron. I don't care. I don't listen to it. 2006, emergency medical service at the crossroads. We found out there was insufficient coordination between service to service, hospital to service, pre-hospital to hospital, out of hospital, state, local, and federal levels. Coordination of transport within regions was limited. I mean, we deal with that on a local level. We deal with that on a state level. We deal with that on the federal level. Just because there's all of these contracts and service agreements and county ordinances and state ordinances and all of these things that it's a piss and match, but no one wants to do the work. It's no one can take our transfers. We're not going to take them either. You guys can't either, right? Because it's a money thing. You know, we're a closed county here. No other service can come in this county and pick up a patient from this county unless I give them authorization to do so. Which I get, because if not, you have services like Lynx and TransCare just trying to squirrel runs. And that takes revenue away, and obviously we're dependent on revenue. And also, again, back to the quality of care, not saying TransCare or Lynx and those are bad, but this county now has an expectation of the care that's provided, right? Like they got all this fancy shit. And then you have another service that rolls up that's BLS only, which we don't run basic trucks here. You know, they show up like, I really need an IV. We can't do that. The other, and people don't know the differences. Like our ambulances here, very bright. They're all practically the same with the exception of two. It says Scott County in platinum letters on the side, right? Very direct. Somehow people get that confused with other services. There was an ambulance wreck in our county last Friday. Not ours, another service. And we got blasted on Facebook that Scott County ambulance hit another vehicle, left them and their dog stranded, didn't even call the insurance company to get them a ride, and that we need to get our shit together and do better. My ambulances are very bright. I'm a very flashy person, that's no secret, right? The ambulance that hit them is 3 colors. Mainly white, with 4 inches that says service ambulance name in blue, with a red line. And it's not New Chip. Right?
Just that funny.
But these people go, ambulance, not even fucking close. But we get blasted on Facebook.
Starts with the same letter.
It does. Wait, what? It does start with an S, yes. Yeah. But, you know, you have all of these issues. Disparities in response times is the big one. You know, and that's one thing we're working on here as a whole, and I think everybody should. And Clark County is, you know, I'm glad to hear, I watched part of that meeting last night, to hear that Clark County is getting on board with the idea of it here. It's when these places call dispatch, I feel like it's dispatch's responsibility to say, listen, I know your tummy hurts. I know it's hurt for 6 weeks. Right now, there's some higher acuity patients in front of you. Your response is probably going to be delayed. That is a thing that I think should be happening for years. Because when you have that chest pain or your difficulty breathing, why am I tying up a truck on a lift assist? It's a perfect thing to get fire out and stretch their legs for. Doesn't need an ambulance. If the patient is telling you, I'm not injured, I'm just too big or too weak to get up, and that's my norm, why are we sending an ambulance to that? Right? That's the same thing that you can use fire, you can use police, you can use whoever. And if fire gets there, a lot of them are cross-trained of a minimum of EMR or EMT and go, hey, this leg's facing the wrong direction. Let's get an ambulance here. That changes the status, right? But we don't need to be, no offense, police. We need an evaluation. Of what? They are breathing. They are not alert. You know they're not. I know they're not. What the fuck do you want me to do? Your car's got 4 doors. Put them in one of them and fucking go to the hospital. What the hell do you need me for?
It's against our policy. Not policy. I took our psych patient.
I'm just saying, like, everybody shit talks us, but then it's like, I need you to do this work for me. No, you don't.
My favorite's when you can see the hospital from where they fall. And you're like,
Hey, I tried for y'all. I really did.
Uncertain quality of care, some of that goes to, back to what I was saying earlier, there's just a difference in what services are able to do. Like, again, I'm fortunate here that I'm mainly paramedic based, so everybody wants to strive and do better. And I'm not saying EMTs don't, but it's a lot, your scope is limited as an EMT. Your scope is limited as an advanced. There is no ceiling on paramedic. So when I'm dealing with mainly paramedic, I can say, hey, let's focus on this stuff. Like it applies to most of my people. Not just that, funding is a big one. A lot of places would probably like to have certain toys, but it's like, we can't afford it. I have to buy new monitors this year. That's $750,000 that I have to spend to buy new monitors. $750,000. Shit's not cheap. Most services can't be like, there you go. That's your fire base. And again, I'm not shitting on fire, but when you have that tax levy to support you, you can be like, I would like 2 new monitors per truck, and you have the money to do it. Private services, government services don't have that ability. Lack of readiness for disaster, that's something that I think police, fire, and EMS all lack in. I don't think that's EMS specific. I think that's emergency services across the board. Everybody talks about it. Everybody's like, we should plan for this. Yeah, we should, but never do. And you can't plan for everything. We have airports, 2 huge airports within 70 miles both directions. Indy and Louisville, right? That means there's some big fucking airplanes that fly over this area. How many 737 airplane crash disasters have you ever trained for? Fucking 0. But how do you plan? How do you train for that? All right, take 237 people and scatter them around this area. Put some of them on fire, put some of them like you can't. There's just certain things you can't train for. The big one that I think that all of us neglect, police mainly, and fire mainly, with EMS as a couplet. Your service, your service, your service, my service, your service, all have really big fucking interstates running through them. Whether it be 71, 65, 64, whatever. How many of us train for hazmat spills, like regularly? Fucking 0. You know how much toxic shit goes up and down those interstates? All of it.
Half the time you don't even know it.
Yeah, because if it's under a certain amount, they don't have to mark it. Is it under 500 gallons?
I think it's up to 1,000 now.
Yeah, it's 999.
Yeah, anything under 1,000 gallons, you'd be like, anhydrous ammonia, 999 gallons, not labeled. You're like, what's that?
As long as it's under 999, they can have multiples, like
Multiples of it.
Home Depot truck. You can have 999 gallons of some sort of pesticide, multiple types of pesticides.
Just not the same one.
Yeah.
There are all these Joe Blow farmers in the area that you don't know what they got in their truck.
Yeah, they got a 7 F-250 with a flatbed, and one of those clear tanks, and go, that is not water.
With a railroad?
Yeah. There's a big choo-choo train track that runs, from Louisville all the way to Indy. We've had 3, in my time here, had 3 train cars around. Luckily, they've always been vehicles. Nissan has had really bad time in this county. But
When you guys do the school shooting thing up here, is EMS involved in that? Because I know
We are now after I threw a bitch fit.
we're not involved at all
They
down
were involved in the county, but like
They-
minuscule.
One time.
So
there.
the involvement, the argument and this is Dylan.
Oh, I can't wait for this because I'm pretty honest.
I don't know that I'm right. So the initial, I seen Dylan's argument. I did. So the initial thing was when we trained with New Chapel with I think it's called RFT. Is that right? They trained they had people come in and with fire and police, and they were with us in the warm zone, and then they would treat and transport. But Dylan's argument was being realistic. He's like, I need my people outside to transport these injured out of here.
Yeah.
If I have them inside, then we just don't have enough people, and we're sitting there as a SWAT team. We're like, well, we can't argue with that. So
Well, but like when you guys do like the training and like you go through and you clear jet high and then like fire's right behind you, like why should we not be there?
you should. The thing was is the only people that showed up to the RFT training were Dylan.
We didn't know that. Nobody told us that.
That's an admin problem.
Well,
It's a favoritism.
well,
That's exactly what it is.
there were 4 New Chapel people there.
Tim,
Not right.
Jamie.
It
Right.
was a dick swinging contest.
It's exactly what it
I can't.
is. That
Here's what it should come down to. Respectfully, SWAT teams in general. So I know that Jeff probably has their own SWAT team, right?
We do.
But you also have a conglomerate of one that people from each specialized area have a really big SWAT team, right? So that's the whole thing is there should be agencies, myself, New Chapel, Jackson County, Jennings County, whoever saying, hey, if something disaster is happening, just like every year during Thunder, hi, this is Gavin, how many trucks can you send? 3. Right? And I know during Thunder, I've got 6 people on standby that are at home jerking their gherkin unless they get a call and they know they got to be here in 30 minutes heading south in a convoy if something happens on Thunder. Right? Because I can tell you, it's happened 2 or 3 times now that she can attest to. I'll get a phone call, hey, we're about to do a no-knock. I need you to come sit up here. I go, oh, damn it. I have to put all my, I had 2 minutes notice to go, hey, we're going to serve this morning. And I got to put all my shit on and fucking go in there with my turtle shell and my gun to go, I'm here. And, I have an ambulance that's a mile away on standby, and my job is to stay in the warm or the hot zone. My job is to go, come here, or I drag them to you and say, get this patient the fuck out of here. There's training that can be done. The problem is the fire, the police, and the EMS don't fucking talk. You guys think it's your priority, they think it's their priority, and fire thinks it's their priority. It's not, it's our priority, but no one wants to work together because everybody's trying to measure. I got the smallest dick in the room, let's get past it. Now what? We've alleviated the dick swinging contest, I'm going to lose. Now what can we do to fix this problem? But the problem is that's not how people approach it. Everybody's like, I got a full 7. Cool, tie a cinder block to mine and it's still not gonna reach there. Let's move on.
I'm working here now. So
No, and I'm not shitting on anybody. That's not a you problem. That's not a New Chapel. That's a systemic problem.
I'm a huge advocate for EMS, and I think
Because respectfully, you guys can have medics on your SWAT team. You're still calling the fucking ambulance.
yes,
We're still outside.
yes, absolutely. But
And you can be like, I'm a SWAT medic. That's cool, motherfucker. Your job is to make sure your buddy gets out to me.
yes,
You're not treating and transporting. Your treating is apply pressure and drag. That is okay. I'm a critical care paramedic. Okay, I can do some really fancy fucking shit. But if I go in on a SWAT team, I'm not fucking innovating and doing all kinds of shit in there.
no,
I am making sure that patient will make it from that fucking doorway to that fucking car. That is my job.
yes.
I know.
But no.
But we don't train them.
You should have been.
We
that.
just seen it on Facebook. And we're like,
That's the same kind of.
I was-
Right.
But we didn't go to the-
I was called on that because I work with EMS, and they said, "What do you do?" I said, "You need to make it a training for everybody, so they're all trained on it." But then the argument was, if we do our job appropriately, the shooting situation is going to be neutralized before any SWAT team's activated, any mutual aid is there.
if.
There's no if about it. It's the way that we are trained. We are going in and we are going to solve the problem before our SWAT team's there. But there's no if. I mean, the scars have been put in with Columbine before.
again, it's a systemic problem across. Divided professional identity, limited evidence base. That's the big thing for us. Evidence-based medicine takes a long time. And we do shit until they go, this is wrong. And then we have another, that's how lidocaine used to be first round cardiac. And they're like, if you like asystole, like lidocaine, right? Which is how it was. And then we're like, let's move to epi. And we're like, fuck, we get heartbeats back with epi. And then they go, while we get heartbeats back, there's no neurofunction. So now now they're like, what do we do besides epi? Like, that's where we're at now. 15 years later, we're like, epi's great to restore rhythm. Epi's awful to restore life as far as functional because it fries your fucking neurons. And that's the problem with evidence. It takes time and it's limited when we're just like, try this color, and that's just how it goes. 2001 National Medical Helicopter Fleet expanded from 300 to 900, which is a lot. Right after that, a record number of helicopter crashes with fatalities. I mean, you triple your stuff, you're going to have more, right? You have 7,000 on the road or 7,000. There's the opportunity for more car wrecks with 7,000. It's just numbers. We started having the NTSB hearings. They get involved anytime anything aero crashes, and they kind of said and that's why. The motto for helicopters now is it takes 3 to fly. The pilot, the nurse, and the medic all have to agree. If one person says, I'm not comfortable, they don't fly. It's not solely up to the pilot. It's not solely up to one person. It takes 3 to fly. They all look at the weather and go, okay? Or one of them goes, and they get a clause too. They got a rest time. So while the pilot might just be up there just on the ground, the medic and the nurse are doing a bunch of crazy shit, and they got this critical patient. They got an hour flight in the back, and they go, I'm exhausted. We need some downtime. They get to fucking have downtime. We don't get to do that. That'd be really cool. I just had 2 codes in an RSI in a row. I need some downtime. That's great. You have a dialysis transfer. That's usually what happens for us.
We had an area that we transported one time, and they're like, if you're not here in an hour, I'm out.
Well, and that's the thing with pilots. They run out of time. At this time, if they're midair and they're still 20 minutes away, guess what they're doing? They'll be landing over here. And they fucking land. It's like Pablo Escobar in his pool. Like, they do not fly anymore. They are limited to time. It's like a truck driver in DOT, how they have their truck logs. Like, you have to have so much downtime between flights. Pilots cannot do 24s. They do 12s. They can only do so many a week, and they can only do so many back-to-back. Like, they have strict limitations on what they can do. And that's why a lot of times we'll call, it's like, they're unavailable. They don't want to tell us, you have a pilot. Because it's embarrassing. That'd be like us saying, well, I called 911. No one wants to advertise that, right? But that's essentially what happens is typically they run out of pilots. So you have different models in today's EMS system. My favorite, fire-based. You have third services, which we would be considered as a government entity. You have private, which are your new chapels, your TransCare, your links. That means you have a sole proprietor or some type of conglomerate owner. They can be for-profit or non-profit. Majority of them are going to be for-profit. That's the whole point of the business, is to make money. You have hospital-based system, which are like your Baptist Floyd's or your Norton healthcare teams. Those are your hospital-based. And the hospital says jump, and the hospital transport team says how high. And then you have a hybrid, which is a combination of, something of those, whether it's or volunteer. You have a hybrid. You can have your paid and volunteer. You can have hospital-based, but you can have an ambulance service that's based in the hospital. However, it might be a private contracted service. You can start mixing those. All of them have their downfalls. The hybrid ones are typically SEALs was a great example of that. When I was over at Washington County, they were based on the hospital, but they never provided an ambulance there. Right? It's like, how do you get away with that? You have a contract. Volunteer, we all know from the fire, EMS, volunteer side, volunteers are dying. Part of that is a generational thing, because everybody in today's world, especially the new age 20-year-olds, are like, what do I get out of it? A thumbs up. Like, what You know, it's just, everybody's entitled. That's part of the problem. And part of it too is the people that were volunteering are getting older and they can't do the same thing or volunteer anymore. They're on Social Security or their body's breaking down or whatever. Like that was the age of people that volunteered are now 60, 70 years old and they can't do it anymore. Hospital-based, again, the big problem with that is the hospital says jump and you say how high. And that's the problem with it from a provider standpoint is it doesn't meet medical necessity. I don't care. I need it out of our ER because our metrics are being affected, so get it the fuck out of here, right or wrong. It is what it is. Third-party service like ours, biggest thing for ours is financial issues because we don't get a whole lot of tax money and most services like ours don't. We might get subsidies or help, but we're not solely tax-based. And it's not just ours, it's just any government entity. Washington County is the same way, Jackson County is the same way. While Jackson County is funded differently, they're all funded through tax dollars. That money gets put back into the tax pool that they get reimbursed through the year. So while on paper it looks like all $3 million of their budget gets funded through taxes, it does, but the $2.5 million that they make a year goes back into the general fund, so it's not the case. Then you have fire-based EMS. Get on my soapbox here for a second. This is what I think is primarily killing EMS as far as EMS is concerned. You have all of these fire departments that are paying exorbitant amounts of money to providers, which I think is great. Thank you for doing that. We appreciate that as providers. However, you treat the providers like pieces of shit because you put your firefighters on a pedestal and put them in a 77 fund or something like that. You give them all of these benefits, and then you have your EMS side that you make civilian paramedics and you treat them like dog shit. They are the ones that make your money. They're the ones that are doing 50-to-1 runs compared to the fire side. And the fire side puts themselves on this hierarchy of a pedestal that says, we are more important than you. Prove it. Now, I'm not saying when the fire department doesn't work that they don't work, because they do. They bust their ass for 2 hours at a time, 1 time a month, 100%. When they work, they fucking work. But the consistency of which they work is obviously limited. And not just that is, there is a bias typically within the department. Fire doesn't want to deal with EMS, EMS doesn't want to deal with fire. And I'm not saying that's the case everywhere, but everybody on the older end of things doesn't want to, there's no place for EMS in a fire department. Okay, cool. Then quit padding your ISO ratings with medical runs. Because guess what that ISO rating does and those run volumes give them? They give them their tax levy is how that fire department's funded. When you're using EMS to help fund or subsidize your fire department, I think it's really asinine to take the side of the house that is making money and making runs to have that run volume number for you to get your tax levy to not reinvest back in it. But we need to buy a new engine that's got 6,000 miles on it because it's 3 years old, so let's spend $1 million on that. But let's not buy some new apparatus for the ambulances that are making 35 runs a day. We make more runs to Kroger than we do fires. That's the problem that I have. And they put themselves on a pedestal, or they are put on a pedestal, and then the EMS is shit on because they're not fire. I don't want to be. I have the same certs that every firefighter that's on not the same, but I have enough certs to be a firefighter. I have what I need plus a few. I don't want to be. That's just it. If I want to do it, I'll do it. And that's what I think most people do. But I had a really good friend of mine here that worked here, left to go to a fire-based service and just stroked it off. Just fire-based is the best thing. 3 weeks later at midnight, he calls me and goes, bro, you were right, I made the wrong decision. What? We talked for about 2 hours that night, and he came back here after 4 weeks of being at a fire-based service because it's not what everybody thinks it is from the EMS side. And again, I'm not shitting on any particular service, but I do believe that fire-based EMS will be the downfall of EMS because we focus on the fire side more than we do the EMS side. And the EMS side is what allows those tax levies and allows them. And that's one thing that they did up there. So obviously we have 3 chase vehicles here, right? So if we were fire-based and I responded and 2 ambulance responded, that's 3 runs. That's what most fire-based places do. And at the end of the year, they say, you had 12,000 runs. No, motherfucker, you had 4, divide that by 3 because you had 3 apparatus respond to every fucking run. But they use that run volume to pad their tax levies and pad their ISO. And to me, that's shady. So that's my 10. Don't tell him here I'm shitting on him, because I'm not shitting on him. I'm here doing good things down there. I think him implementing an ambulance, I don't agree with the way a lot of it is. But again, that's not curriculum, that's my own personal opinion. You guys interject yours and I'm gonna do mine on that. Chain of survival, continuum of care that begins once the emergency occurs. Obviously, if it's a true emergency, we are not the definitive factor. They either end up at a hospital or a morgue, right? I mean, we don't just take them home. They're not a puppy. We don't, all right, come with me, grandma. Like, you're mine now. Like, we take them somewhere. So there has to be a continuum of care. It ends when the patient completely care and returns to normal activities of daily living. And that's one thing that we forget is while some of us in this field go, what's the closest hospital? That's the wrong way to look at things. It's what is the most appropriate hospital. And sometimes it's the closest one, but sometimes it's the furthest one away. And while we bitch on our side about our services being taxied of, people using us as a means of transportation to the hospital for the primary care physician to be the ER, we shouldn't be shitting on hospitals to overload their side of things to go, hey, I know this patient doesn't belong here, but I don't want to fucking go 30 miles, so I'm bringing them to you and you can worry about it later. That's a stupid outlook to have as well, because not only are you taxing that hospital, now you're not doing well by the patient. Because if they don't have what they need there, what are you doing? You're prolonging their care. You're prolonging their ability to get the treatment that they need. And that's one thing that you should take into consideration on every patient that you interact with. AHA, another TED Talk, AHA is a racket. Moving on. Immediate recognition and the activation of EMS early CPR. We are big advocates in our field of bystander CPR. I know our dispatch center is an EMD. Clark County's is not, correct? We're not a true EMD?
No.
Okay. I feel like every dispatch center should be an EMD. That's just my personal opinion. I think at some point we're gonna get there. I know, I kind of understand why Clark County's not at this point, but again, I feel like they could still do what they need to do with the issues that they have, but the county has. But an EMD pretty much is what they have is, it's a playbook. And, they have all these flip cards, if you will, or they have on-scene flip things that say, hey, if this, then this. It's big algorithm based. And they can walk you through CPR, they can walk you through a stroke assessment, they can walk you through anything and everything that they need prior to EMS or first responder arrival. And I feel like dispatch as a whole needs to trend that way. Rapid and early defibrillation is big. One of the first things that we used to do in this field as medics was be like, get IVs and intubate. How about we see what we're dealing with first? Getting on the chest and doing compressions or continuing compressions correctly or better than bystander CPR should be number one, and getting them on pads to see what that underlying rhythm is, if anything, should be number two. Effective ALS. I am a firm believer in BLS before ALS. However, there are some things that obviously very few people respond just from hands-on CPR and come back to it. Usually they need some type of intervention, that whether it be medication or airway or certain things that just the BLS level cannot do. I'm not saying that BLS is not important. Again, I'm going to reiterate BLS before ALS, especially in these situations. And then post-cardiac arrest care. Do any of you guys in the field do hypothermic therapeutic tendencies or agencies in your field? Cool. Do you, if you get lost in the field, do you do any type of hypothermic treatment? That's something I think the next year or two that they're going to try and push out as a thing with AHA. Huh? Yep. Yeah, we'll do the same thing if we get rocked in the field. We'll put ice packs under their armpits and on their neck and all those things to help cool them down. It's just a thing that's been proven to help. Chain of survival, bystander care is the first one. Again, if you can have that information or that hands-on care from bystanders, it helps. Dispatch, obviously, is an important mechanism in the beginning of this. Then getting the proper information that needs to be relayed to us, and then relaying said information is also helpful. Our response, pre-hospital care, which would be our care, transportation, where do we need to go? What is the most appropriate facility, not which one is more conducive to my needs. Now, on the flip side of that, there's some people that are like, our frequent flyers, that are like, I need to go to Floyd. I am not going 45 minutes away from we are getting hammered, and there's nothing that I can see right now that says that you need to go 45 minutes away. The most appropriate facility is the closest. You know, it's a double-edged sword. Now, if you have the resources and stuff, take the people where they want to go. But there is no law that says we have to take them where they request. It's not a thing. Not a thing. It's a request. I request I'm paid $1 million an hour. Denied. Right? It is a request. Should we do that by the patient if you have the resources? Absolutely. But that's not a definitive thing. Definitive care is a big thing. Again, going to where they need to go, not where you want to take them because it's more conducive to you. You know, strokes need to go to a stroke center. Traumas need to go to a trauma center. STEMIs need to go to somewhere with a cath lab. You know, we're not going to bring a STEMI to Scott and be like, all right, good day. That's what's going to happen. I'm going to see them in 9 minutes, taking them to a cath lab. Take them where they need to go. Then you have rehab. You know, especially in your ROS patients, your stroke patients, your broken bone patients, your trauma patients, those things. You know, you've got bilateral femur fractures and you don't walk for 9 months. They're going to do some rehab to learn how to re-walk. You have strokes and you have deficits or you have impairments. They have to learn to live through those deficits or impairments. Rehab is part of that. Public safety access points, 911 call centers, the interface between EMS and communication. Identifies acute coronary syndrome and the ST elevation in the field. I don't know that. Around here anyway. And then primary precutaneous coronary intervention. Again, I don't know where that does it. Again, your levels in Indiana and nationally are these are the ones that are recognized: EMR, EMT, advanced paramedic. Those ones in bold, you should probably know what they're about. And then you have to read them. You have to do a paper on them to know what they cover. Local and state level agencies, administrative oversight agency like ours is IDHS. Obviously, in this state, you guys have a cabinet in Kentucky, correct? That kind of oversees all your stuff. There's usually planning boards, both local, state, and federal. They define the system, policies consistent with state requirements. Again, they cannot be less than, but can be more than on some instances. And then you have state EMS agencies, some which allocate funds. And they enact legislation. I know right now there's a bill 13, '02 or '06, something like that, that is doing a big study on all of the EMS service agencies in Indiana. It's looking at response time, run volume, treatments, clinical care, transport times, number of units they run, and all of that, for them to take to federal and state legislation and be like, listen, this model cannot fucking sustain. Like, there has to be some funding that federal and state agencies give, because in Indiana, it is a requirement that all 92 agencies have some form of EMS coverage. However, the legislation dictates that, but there's no funding for it. So that's what they're looking at here, is to say, hey, if we're going to dictate this, we need to have some type of catch safe to say, hey, we'll help you with this. Medical oversight is done by your medical director. Physician is responsible for all of our clinical care. That is a very vicarious role for that person to be in. Depending on how hands-on your medical director is. Again, you may not see our medical director here, but he talks to me at least once a week and says, what's going on, issues, concerns, any training issues, anybody need issues, is anybody fucked up, any of those things. That's how he talks. And I'll say, hey, we had this clinical error, or we had this medication error, no, everything's great. With this class, he stays pretty on top of it. How are they doing? Who's learning? Who's not paying attention? Who do I need to talk to? Who are we kicking out? Whatever the case might be. Again, last class, he kicked out 2 people. Said if they're not going to apply themselves, they're not going to be in this class, because he is ultimately responsible for all of you, just like he's ultimately responsible for all of us. And that's why for him to give us some of the procedures we have, like here we can do chest tubes in the field, that's big. That's something you can fuck up real easy, right? But he stays on top of it. He makes sure we do our training and allows us to do it. So medical director is a very vicarious position to be in, because he doesn't know everybody. He doesn't know any of you. And he could come in here every day, he'd know you, but he doesn't have that time. He's a conductor, He'll come in here at least once or twice through the class at some point, but other than that, you're not Facebook friends with him. You're not going to dinner with him. That's just an area that he's in. We are his designated agents, if you will. He says, this is what you can do, and this is what I expect you to do. And that's one thing a lot of people don't understand, especially at this service and other services in this area. While your medical director says you can do this, they also say you shall do this. Everybody is held to the same standard. And if X, Y, Z are met, you shall be doing this procedure. If A, B, C are done, you need to do D. It's not, I don't want to do it, or I'm not comfortable doing it. It is your responsibility that you know how to do it, and you can do what is expected for you to do. Their roles are to educate and train, participate in personnel and equipment selection. I know ours here, I don't think most do have a personnel like that. Now, there has been a couple people, like through our medical or paramedic classes over the year, that, be like, we're not hiring them when they're done. Be like, oh, I'm aware. That's just how it is. Equipment selection, he's big on. He knows that, like, we're having to buy monitors this year. He's got his input on it. They develop protocols and cooperation with, EMS. There's been some stuff he brings to us that he goes, I'd like to see you guys do this. Most cases, it's us going to him, like, we want to do this. Some of it we get pushed through, some of it we don't. Some of it, like, he wanted to give our advanced morphine and stuff here. I'm like, we can't do that. Well, I'm telling you can. Like, I get that, but that's not how the state works. I appreciate, and that's just one of those things. They participate in QA, problem resolution, and improvement. Provide direct input on patient care. Again, while we have a medical director, you still have medical direction, right? If there's an issue, and I don't know how your services function, some of them baffle me on who they call. If we call medical direction, we always call our affiliating hospital. Even if we're transporting to U of L, we don't call U of L, because U of L doesn't know what our capabilities are. They don't know what our equipment is. They don't know what our drug formulary is. They don't know anything, right? So you call U of L, they're going to treat us like, Kentucky State Prison EMTs that go, just get them here as quick as you can. All the shit that I can do, I'm just trying to look for some guidance. That's why, in my opinion, you should be calling your affiliating hospital. Your, what, like, who's your guys' medical directed hospital, you know? Where's he out of?
U of L.
U of L. So then you guys, in my opinion, should call U of L for medical direction. McLean's out of Clark, you should be calling Clark for all of those needs. Whether you're transporting to Floyd or U of L or wherever, you should be calling Clark. That is, they know your protocol, they know all of that. If I call Clark, well, Clark's not a good example. If I call U of L and go, hey, I've got this patient, I got negative breath sounds, blah, 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 I got positive aspiration on, you know, a dart. You want me to chest tube them? They're gonna go, absolutely not. Because that's just not something that's commonly done. I call Scott, they're like, yeah, go ahead. Call me back if you need anything. Like that, they don't see that in the field a lot. So you should be calling your medical direction hospital. Unless your protocols say differently. They're an advocate within the medical community, and they serve as the medical conscience of the EMS. You have online medical control, again, via the telephone or the radio, whether you use iHer or the 800 or you call them on the phone. That happens sometimes. We'll call them like, hey, I need to talk to Doc. I just sent you a 12 lead. I want to do heparin. Like, I'm thinking heparin and Plavix, just want to get a confirmation before I administer heparin. Yep, that's a STEMI. Cool. See you, bye. Or, hey, I've got this psych patient. I've given 10 of Valium and 5 of Versed and 2 of Ativan. This motherfucker's still chugging. What do I do? What else you got? Ketamine. Send it. Cool. Thanks, bye. Right? Or I've tried all of it. What do I do now? What do now? Handcuff him. He is. Like, that's what your medical direction is for. You might have an intervener physician. They come on scene or online. We've had one case here where our medical director actually came out in the field and did a field amputation because they were pinned under a vehicle that they couldn't get out without causing catastrophic injury to the patient. So they did a leg amputation in the ditch. So you might see that. Hopefully not. Offline medical control are your protocols. Policies, your procedures, all of that stuff that's in that fancy book that's required to be on every truck. That's your offline medical control. Your standing orders. Yep. It is a responsibility of that medical director to make sure everybody can meet those clinical protocols as well as knowing what is in place. The 4 T's: triage, treatment, transport, and transfer. Figure out what's wrong with them. We do the stuff that we're capable of doing that is in their best nature. We transport them to the designated most appropriate facility, and we transfer patient care to that hospital. I went back. Public information and education, have access, provide basic life support assistance, relationship between rapid emergency care and mortality death rates. All of us are required to have a minimum, have an AED. If they say paramedic on the side, they must have a monitor. That's why none of my vehicles say paramedic on the side, on the slim chance that all of them come down with COVID-21 and they're all sick. That means that they're mandated to be paramedic staff, and I'm not doing it. So, at a minimum, all trucks should have an AED for BLS and a monitor for ALS. Those are requirements of the state. Carson. Effective communication. They coordinate, obviously our dispatch is what coordinates movement of resources and stuff here, whether we need fire on scene, whether we need anybody for lift assist, whether we need PD there because the patient's being irate, whether we need a helicopter, whether we need other units, all of that stuff goes through dispatch. They do the operational communications, we do the medical communications, and you obviously have certain hardware and software. That's pretty high-tech dispatch center. Some agencies have ADL so they can see. I know Kentucky fucks you with that one down in Louisville. Well, you're a closer unit, not my district, bitch. That's what the response they would get from me, but some of them don't. Emergency medical dispatcher, again, the EMD sends an ambulance to scene, ensures resources are in constant readiness to respond, both medically and technically trained. By medically, that's usually at least CPR, AED, and first aid trained. Like, a lot of them don't have their EMT or paramedics. No one's gonna get their paramedic in the city dispatch center unless they're retiring. Some of them, I know, like New Chapel has their own dispatch internally, that after Central sends out a dispatch, their internal dispatch will say, hey, this truck needs to respond, or this truck needs to respond, or this truck needs to respond. In high acuity situations here with a run volume, we've seen power, we do the same thing here. That we'll start designating trucks to certain areas depending on the run volume. But they help with response configurations, and that's that system management. You have initial education, completing a national EMS education guideline. They test both cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. That's how you're graded in this class. Accreditation. Here we are COAMP and KHEP accredited. You must be to have a paramedic education program. If you don't, then you can't. You can teach EMR, EMT, and advanced EMT, but you cannot teach COAM, or you cannot teach paramedic without COAM and KHEP accreditation, or KHEP accreditation. We are dual on COAM and KHEP. Most places don't do that because the cost is anywhere between $50,000 and $100,000 to get that certification. And then you get scrutinized by, not scrutinized, you get reviewed by them frequently to look at grades, pass rates, and all of those things.
Pass rates and stuff on the public.
Yes, we have to publish our pass rates, first time pass, second time pass, pass within 3, pass within 6, who did not attempt. All of theirs are who failed out after 6. All of that has to be published, which I think to an extent is good. The problem with that, though, is if you have someone who's just, for lack of better terms, a complete nerder that has, the abilities to take the classes, that's why here we try to screen. We say, to me, it's a quality over quantity thing. We had 23 applicants, there's 15 of you in here. Not saying that the other people couldn't do it, it's just that you were more suited to do it because we have to look at pass rates. And you could have a millionaire that has an IQ of 6 and be like, I'm going to take this class. And well, knowing they're not going to pass, that can get our COAM and KHEP accreditation removed. And I can't teach a paramedic class. So that's something that, on the EMT side, we don't have to consider. You got money, we'll take it, right? You got money, take it. Paramedic, we can't take that same algorithm and apply it because we could lose our COAM and KHEP. Again, you have license, certification, registration, and reciprocity. License is an occupational regulation. Certification is the agency or association grants you recognition that you have completed something. So that is the difference. Certification, in theory, is no more than a piece of paper that says, you did a good job passing this class. Go you. While license is an occupational regulation that is regulated by a board of people. Registration, literally what it says, name and essential information for a particular record. And, every time you register for some type of course, whether you take it or not, your name stays within, IDHS's information says, hey, Joe's applied 6 times to paramedic program. Basically. Reciprocity. Agent grants automatic certification or licensure to an individual as comparable certification. Again, that's what we deal with between Kentucky and Indiana. Indiana's nice and says, you don't have to pay a penny. Kentucky says, give me $350. That's just, states can do what they want. As short as providers are, there should be no pay in my, if you if a provider is willing to come to your state, you should be like, we will pay you. Here's $50, thank you. But again, National Registry, I need $150 for your recertification. Go to Kentucky, I need $350 for you to come work here. Yeah. NREMT, allegedly nonprofit, prepares and administers standardized tests for EMS provider levels, and I will be transparent with you. This new testing phase that you guys are going to, I'm learning with you. I've taught paramedic class for, I don't know, 5-6 years now, whatever it's been. And it changed this year. It changed in the midst of my last class finishing. So we're learning on that together. The way that it tests for you will be different. And while we're on this topic, National Registry is gone away, the psychomotor side of things. It says psychomotor will be done in class and we'll keep a portfolio as long as, Justin did his stuff and did it correctly. And if they come on to us, we go, no, just because he fucked up on the street doesn't mean he fucked up in here. We did all of this stuff. However, it looks like Indiana is going to adopt that there's going to still be a psychomotor exam, but it will not be to the extent of the other one. It looks like they're going to do psychomotor for not just paramedic, but advanced as well, because advanced was going away from psychomotor as well. Right now, again, it's still up in the air, still subject to change, but it looks like for paramedic, it will be a mega code and an oral board and a 20-minute out of hospital. All the other stuff is going. So instead of having 7 stations, you'll have 3. That's what it's looking like right now. Again, subject to change. They could add 4 more in, they can take 2 out, they can say we're not doing any altogether. But that's what it's going to look like you guys will be dealing with towards the end of this class. And that's the problem, is everybody has to get National Registry certified or tested, right? But then the state can be like, and this. And each state's different. So it's, why are we standardizing stuff to unstandardize it? But NREMT does establish a minimum standard of competency. Again, that is the lowest level of which you can function at. Again, like I told you, day one, this class will be taught at above minimum National Registry standards. You have professional organizations within EMS, NAEMT, that's where you get your PHLS and AMLS, it's just another acronym. You've got the NASAR, which is the search and rescue. You got NAMSI, which is for educators, and you got NAMSP, which is for physicians. IFPA is Flight Paramedics, EMS Management Association, and then you have the Council of State. I don't know, I've never heard of that. We took all the letters of the alphabet soup and came up with something. The National Council of State EMS Testing Coordinators. Professional journal magazines. These are the big ones. GEMS is probably one that if anybody's ever been to FDIC or EMS World, you probably still get, no matter how many times you unsubscribe, you somehow still get emails from them. And GEMS is a big one. Academic Emergency Medicine and American Journal are 2 big ones as well. Internet, in case you didn't know, it's there. Patient transport. Again, you need to transport based on the needs of the patient, but you have to consider the availability of services as well. Here, even if you need to go to U of L and you're the only truck in the county, you're getting flown or you're going to Scott. It's going to be annotated here because we still have 23,000 people that we have to care for, and having no ambulances. If they can't fly, obviously we have precautions and measures in place that we tone in our RT or we tone in extra squads or admin comes in to staff trucks. That if it's raining or snowy or there's a cloud Lewis that they won't fly, we'll come in and staff those trucks so the patient get where they need to go. But again, you need to think logistical and clinical purposes when you're making the decision. You can transport by ground or air. You got fixed wing or rotor. And vehicles must be licensed in the state. That's why you see those 3 to 4 to 5 digit numbers on the ambulances that they're all identifying the state that they're in. It says this has been recognized by our EMS Commission and IDHS. That says someone has graced this vehicle that it meets the minimum requirements, meets NHTSA, meets the KKK standards, meets all of this stuff, that it can be an operational, it's not the KKK that's in the woods, it's a different one. I think it's like KKK 82 or something like that, but it's just standards of structurability and stuff. You're safe, Jack. What they need. Really? That's that.
Is there any fixed wings within the next like few states around us or anything?
I remember that one. Grace has one out of Indy as well. That's an ambulance, it's a helicopter. That's a go-get-em brothers truck right there.
Special teams, special planes.
That's that's an airplane. So there's different types of ambulances. Type 1 are going to be your truck chassis on a box that are separated by that piece of rubber or foam, and they are independent, meaning the cab and the chassis can move separately from each other. There's no passageway, but there is this window, but you can't walk through. Type 2s are your Sprinter vans, and your Econoline vans that have been converted into an ambulance. Very minimal room. I think they have their place in convalescent transfers. Personal opinion, they have no place in 911. Then you have your type, that is not a type 1. That is a medium, I guess in theory it is. That's a medium duty truck. It's got the J-Town's new truck right there. That's a big son of a bitch. Those have air brakes and they are a special driving certification required for those. That is in fact a type 2. There's your ambulance. Again, usually the patient is pressed up against a wall. You cannot access both sides of the patients. You know, what happens if you get a patient that's got a fistula in the left arm and you need to start an IV going on the road? Very difficult to do that when you can't get to the right side of their body. Type 3 are specialty. They're van chassis with a box. My trucks aren't parked out back there anymore. We have 3 of those here. Again, they're the Econoline vans that still have the big box on it. And there is a passageway. It's a little mini troll door that if you're not too wide and you're not like 19 feet tall, you can crawl down in there and get through for some reason if you need to. And you have the medium duty trucks, which was the first picture that they showed you. They are built for specialized vehicles or just, larger vehicles for whatever reason. I know like Nashville Fire and EMS, they use them. They got the big internationals down there. You guys just got a Frazier that's got, I think, the international front on yours. Same concept. Some of them are diesel, developed for fuel economy and price. They are more expensive. That is a Type 1 ambulance. That is not a Type 3. That is a truck chassis on a box. But yeah, that is a normal Type 1. There's your specialty medium duty and heavy duty trucks there. Obviously a specialized unit for that. Another ambulance. Again, there's your Mercedes Sprinter. Appropriate receiving facilities, identify readiness and capabilities. Some hospitals require you to call report, some only want you to call report if it's something critical, and some say we'll just see you when you get here. If you do, make sure you keep your report concise and to the point. Trauma centers, chest pain centers, stroke centers, and specialized capabilities. Again, make sure if you've got a stroke, you're not taking it to a tertiary, critical care unless you have to. Unless the patient's unstable or you have no resources. You have special facilities, burn, trauma, pediatrics, psych, all of those things. All receiving facilities, they should have certain things. All emergency departments have at least some type of blood bank, some type of imaging capabilities. Some have ICUs or CCUs, allegedly, and they must have lab. You have mutual aid, mass casualty preparation. Again, this is something I think that all of us struggle with universally and systemically. We don't prepare for those mass casualty situations. And by definition, mass casualty is anything that exceeds your on-scene resources. So you show up to a 5-car MBA and one ambulance shows up, by definition, that is a mass casualty. Now it can quickly unbecome a mass casualty by requesting additional resources and units, but again, by definition, it is. You should have geographical and boundaries. I don't know why there would be political boundaries, but I mean, I guess that becomes into a money thing. Disaster plan for catastrophes. I'm sure your EMA has some type of plan for stuff. Typically, it's not shared with us until we're in the middle of it. It's like, you should know this. You ain't gone over with us since '97, bro. Like half the people were just born. So those should be in mutual aid agreements. We have standing mutual aid agreements with every county that touches us, Jackson County, Washington County, New Chapel, and KDH. Just, I feel like that's our responsibility. That if something ever happened here, they know that we need them to respond, and vice versa, that we will respond for them. Quality assurance and improvement. No one likes QA time. Some services mandatory, some don't. But they are gone over depending on what the topic is, whether it's runs, clinical, logistical, financial. QA maintains continuous monitoring and measurement of clinical care. Again, that's how we learn. That's how we should do. Helps open up your mindset to things. A lot of people are typically stuck in their ways, and that's the way I've always done it. Not realizing medicine's changed in the last 20 years, and we can do different stuff now. It's a problem identifying mechanism of why do we continually have this problem? Oh, it's because we don't have this. Or, oh, it's because we do this instead of this. It's a good way to say, hey, why are we not getting the outcomes that we want? Oh. CQI is the ongoing efforts to refine and improve, provide the highest level of service possible. We do that on the back end during our run QA. We do the CQI. Our captains here do that. Problem solving methodology, and we can plan, do, check, and act. Again, what do we have to do? Let's do it. Let's revisit the topic to see what the outcomes are, and then let's enact it out. Rules for evidence must be theoretical basis for change. There must be a need for change. We don't change, it's not broke, don't fix it, right? So there needs to be a theoretical basis for change. Why are we changing it? Because of this. There must be ample scientific human research to support an idea. There must be clinically important. Just because we want to do something, it has to make sense for there to be a clinical outcome to it. It must be practical, affordable, and teachable. Again, there's some stuff here that we would love to do, but not everybody's going to be able to do it. And we can't, you can, I guess, in theory, impose a hierarchy within your service here, but then that goes against that whole quality of care of what your community expects. Last time I seen this paramedic do open heart surgery. This one can't innovate. Like, there is no consistency with quality of care, so that's why it needs to be practical, affordable, and teachable. Ethics are rules or standards that govern the conduct of members of a particular group or profession. Need to know that definition. Know what ethics means. EMS providers have an ethical responsibility to the patients and the public. Quit being twats. Lose your tune, lose your mood, and be a public servant. And care and compassion goes a long way. Huh?
You can just say everything really nice, no matter what you say.
Yeah. As long as you say like Jackie, you like, you are an asshole. Thank you. Casey is the queen of backhanded comments. Customer satisfaction. While this might not be Walmart, CVS, or Sears, these are still our customers. And I think it goes without saying that you piss off enough people, they're going to be boisterous about the condition that they're in. There are medical errors, skill-based failures. That means that we just didn't do something or did something incorrectly. Rule-based, meaning, hey, you might have done what you did correctly, but you weren't supposed to do it. Or knowledge-based, if you did something that you didn't know or should have known you did or did not do. Our protocols here are very loosely written, and there's a lot of gray between the black and white that, you know, you can make some knowledge-based decisions to say, wow, our cardiac arrest algorithm may not have calcium and magnesium in it. You know how it works. Doesn't say you can't. So, but again, that leads you into a lot of knowledge-based failures if you don't know exactly how it works. High-risk areas for EMS. Handoff. Most of us are like, hey, patient's here, have a good day. Can you sign this report for me? And bye. While you don't need a 20-minute dictation for handoff, you should be giving what the patient was like, what the patient's complaint was, what they were like when you got there, what you did, what changes or pertinent negatives there has been, and can you sign my stuff? There needs to be a quality report handed off every time. Because the last thing that we need is you giving a shit report, forgetting to say that you gave a couple medications, then going and duplicating it or giving something that interacts with it, and then the patient having a less than pleasant outcome because you gave a shit handoff. Communication issues, both verbal with our patients. Some of us are less than pleasant sometimes or just don't communicate at all. That's not something you should do, is just sit in the back in awkward silence for a 22-minute transport, just listening to the road hum. Just cool. It's not what we do. Some of it is communication as far as our narratives. Some of it is with dispatch. I'm guilty of that one. We just all need to do better. Medication issues, whether it's we did give too much of something, not enough of something, or gave something at all. One of those things that you guys are really going to have to get in the habit of is ask, I mean, I'm sure you do at some point or another, but before giving any medication, we need to start asking for allergies. I'm sure that's not on the top of a lot of your list since your medication is limited, and usually we might ask in our, as we're typing our report next to our patient, do you have any allergies? So I can click a couple buttons. Not, hey, I'm about to like give you some shit. You allergic to anything? Go, oh, what are you allergic to? Oh, Pentagram. Ooh, okay, we'll suck that back out. Like you don't want to be in that kind of situation, right? Airway issues, that is a very common area of issue because it's, while we can, I want to make this clear when we get to the airway portion, airway is my niche. It's my strong suit. It's where I live. You intubating on a mannequin or doing airway procedures on a mannequin is nothing like it is in real life. Please, and I'm going to tell you this, and you can bring in everybody that just passed my class. Everyone did intubation, and you're like, this shit ain't hard. That's why he's so good at it, because this shit ain't hard. No, you're getting down your mechanics down, not the procedure. No one's airway is that clear and that rigid for you to be like, there it is. No one's. Not the history of it. I've intubated 542 people in my career. I've done a lot of intubations. Not one has been the same. So please do not get this false sense of cakewalk when we get to the airway portion of this class. Please do not. You're going to set yourself up for failure. And do not be too proud to be like, I can't get this. I can't see. And if you're ever asked, are you in? That's not one of those sexual comments. It is, are you for sure in? Because any time without an airway is going to cause detrimental problems to your patient. And if you don't know, confirm or pull. That's what I'm going to preach about. Airway is the one thing that I'm going to hammer on because I'm really good at it. And I can really help you if you listen. But airway and cardiology are the two biggest issues. Dropping patients. You know, we only drop on people days that end in Y. That's a big lawsuit. But again, that's from simple moving to being on the stretcher to, you know, your goon dick of a partner not holding the head, you ride the corner, and then they eat into the wall and fall over. You have to be careful whether it's on a sheet, mega mover, reed sleeve, stretcher, picking them up, extremity lift, whatever. Try not to drop your patients. Ambulance crashes, they usually happen because of us. Either we're not paying attention or we're putting ourselves in situations we shouldn't be in. Again, we have really bright lights with a really loud siren, and no one sees us or hears us. You need to drive like it's not there. And then death pronouncements. There's a reason only paramedics can pronounce it. Cops can't pronounce death. None of those people can pronounce death. You know, obviously unless their head's here and the body's there again. But don't just walk in there and go, other stuff. And I've seen people do that. I've seen cops do that in this county, and that's the reason they don't do it anymore, because it's like 1079. You'd be like, charging, what are you doing? Fucking still have electrical activity, bro. They're not breathing. No shit. Like, that's why we're here. So make sure every patient, obviously not here, gets a 4 lead to at least confirm a system.
Or you have a Lazarus effect issue.
Huh?
Or you have a Lazarus effect. We actually had that on the scene.
Really?
We'd already told the family. We had already taken everything off. And the chest started like
Fluttering?
and we were like, is that epi beats? What the heck's going on? And then we put her back on the monitor and she had a normal heartbeat. We're like,
See, that's why here we will not pronounce. If we pronounce on scene, we don't start. We start, we transport. We don't do the whole 20 minutes. Nope. We start here, we transport. That alleviates that caveat there. EMS systems must have a clear protocol, at least somewhere to start. Again, some gray areas okay. Must be understood and known by all providers. Standardization and organization of drugs, packaging, and equipment is huge to me. That's why here, every truck may not be identical, but they are all set up the same. That way, no matter what truck you get in, you know it's the same general location. Because in the heat of the moment, you're not going to be like, oh, okay. Give me the other cabinet. No, you want everything that you can not have to look. I like to not be able to look, put my hand in the cabinet, and reach out what I need to get. That's how I think bags should be bags should be uniform, trucks should be uniform, equipment should be uniform, everything is the same. Paramedics play a valuable role in data collection, evaluation, and interpretation of research. Not necessarily that we're giving, we're doing symposiums and speeches on things, but every narrative that we do, and that's why when we went over documentation the other day, we are giving qualitative and quantitative research. We have documentation. Did this happened. Every time. When in doubt, ask for help. That's the biggest thing that I can preach. Don't fucking Johnny Rambo this shit, just shoot from the hip. This isn't the wild, wild west. Either you know what you're doing, if you don't, and don't be too proud to ask for help. I still will call for help if I need it. Whether it's from a doctor or another truck saying, listen, we don't have enough resources, we don't have enough hands, or doc, I'm at fucking lost for words here. Ask for help if you need it. Don't fake it till you make it. I mean, on the front, be like, I know what I'm doing. Scream inside all you want, but don't be afraid to call for help. Research is a big component. That's how we justify, things that we continue to grow and do, outcome studies. For moral, educational, all of that kind of stuff. Evidence-based medicine, that's big. Obviously, there has to be some evidence to what we're doing. Conscientious, explicit, and judicious use of current best scientific evidence and making the best decisions about individual patients. Again, we're seeing with evidence-based medicine, while EPI does some good things, EPI also does bad things. We're going to, as a whole, be doing research on what else can we use, or can we make a new medication, whatever the case might be that we need to do. Same thing with the whole Narcan that came out. We've got this Narcan, and then they came out with that new OMEPS or whatever it's called. It's new Narcan, it's 8 milligrams, it acts differently, it does all of that. There's been a growth based off of that. Be familiar with current and past research pertinent to pre-hospital, things that worked that didn't work, be able to integrate those. In case we didn't know, again, we're going to go over this. We're not, we already went over it. Unless you want to hear my speech about fire-based EMS. I would love to have a fully tax subsidized municipal system. Most places aren't. Some are volunteer. Went over all of that. Any questions? Okay, let's go ahead and take 7. We'll hit on the next chapter and we'll break for lunch here in a little bit.
Do you have the copy of the paper that has the link to